Welcome to Armchair Expert, Experts on Expert. I'm Doug Fairbanks, and I'm joined by,
Who am I today?
what was the famous May actress?
Fannie Mae.
Fannie Mae. I'm joined by Fannie Mae.
Fannie
Fannie Mae
Mae's
and
the
Fannie
bank.
Mac. Yes, I think it's the
Mae West.
housing. Mae West.
Oh, no, I'm Fannie Mae.
Oh, okay. Fannie Mae's here. We have a great guest today.
Really
Tells us a
good.
very heartbreaking story that I really felt grateful to be hearing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Her name is Prachi Gupta, and she is an award-winning journalist. She has a new book out right now called They Called Us Exceptional and Other Lies That Raised Us.
So an immigrant story.
Indian family.
Yeah, but it speaks largely to token immigrants, basically. Or
The model minority.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
The myth of the model minority.
Yeah, and it's an important
Although in your
story.
case, it's not a myth, I gotta say. Unfortunately, you really perpetuate the stereotype.
No,
Very
I
high
don't.
achieving.
But I didn't
upper
do any of
class.
the. Yeah, but I didn't. I did a not modelly way to get there.
Unconventional.
Extremely. I
What-
didn't do any of the things that I was supposed to do to get there.
And what else would you expect from Fannie Mae?
That's right.
Please enjoy Prachi Gupta.
He's an armchair expert. He's an armchair expert. He's an armchair expert.
Isn't she wearing a cute jumpsuit?
Yeah.
Thank you.
We love jumpsuits
I
here.
love jumpsuits.
Yeah.
They're the best.
They
a full
are.
outfit in one.
Exactly.
Piece of clothing.
Looks put together.
Are you guys similar age? 87.
Yeah.
August
I'm
24th.
86.
Nice.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, you're a year and a half older than your brother. So are you born in the July area?
Yes,
Your
July
brother's
19th.
January?
Yeah,
July
he was
19th.
Oh,
January
almost
19th.
Kristen's birthday.
Okay. So the similarities abound. Similar age. Both love jumpsuits.
Sure. Do you like Mary-Kate and Ashley?
I don't really know what they're up to now, but when I was a kid, I did.
Okay. We're just going to go through everything I like and see if you like it.
You're visiting from New York. Yeah.
Yes.
Where do you live in New York?
Brooklyn,
What area of Brooklyn?
Prospect Park. I don't know how well you know that area.
I know Clinton Hill because my
Okay.
favorite restaurant's there.
Oh, what's your favorite restaurant?
Emily Pizza.
Okay, I've never been there.
Okay.
Emily Squared is
Emily
what it's
Squared.
called. And
Oh,
then
okay.
they have amazing pizza, but we love the burger.
I didn't have my first hamburger until I was like 20.
Oh,
and I was
really?
like, oh my God,
Yeah.
this is really good.
Life-changing.
It's hard to hate. My wife was vegetarian for 32 years and ate a hamburger last year in Nashville and has eaten, this isn't an exaggeration, right? 5-6 a week since. Can't stop.
Well, she definitely doesn't have an iron deficiency.
She doesn't
Yeah.
any longer.
She's going to have
She
heart
had one.
disease now, but
She has some artery issues. Pulmonary health is in a nosedive. But and do you get to visit LA a lot?
No, this is my third time.
Ever?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
What were the previous trips? Promotional?
One was for a podcast. I co-hosted a podcast called Big Time Dicks.
Okay.
About the laws and lawmakers fucking up your life.
Oh.
And it was at Jezebel.
Okay.
So I came for Politicon. This was several years ago. And then before that, I think it was maybe as a kid to visit family. And we did the whole Universal Studios.
sure, Hollywood sign.
Yeah, that kind of stuff.
All of
yeah,
it.
which I don't remember, to be honest.
What side of the family was living in California?
So my second cousin on my dad's side.
Okay. So let's run through a brief history. You're from Pittsburgh.
I'm kind of from all over Pennsylvania, but in elementary school, I lived in Pittsburgh.
Okay. And then you moved to kind of a nicer something valley.
Lehigh Valley, yeah.
Is that where Carnegie lived? Was that where the rich people lived while all the steel was being made? Because there's these stories of Pittsburgh that you couldn't even see in the daytime. There was so much gross soot and steel in the air. And
Yeah, there
everyone
was-
that owned them lived way out in this valley where the air was clean.
Yeah, there was certainly a certain part of Pittsburgh that was super nice and had all these like old mansions
Yes.
and the shady side area. But Lehigh Valley's on the other side of the state. Bethlehem Steel is also a steel town. And you know the song Allentown by Billy Joel?
Yes.
Oh, my.
Yeah.
I don't think I know it.
You do, and it starts with sounds of like
Choo choo?
yeah, well, they're like industry sounds, but it's got an air horn.
Oh.
Yes.
We'll play it on the fact check.
Yeah. You definitely know.
Really?
It's a
Okay.
standard. It's a
Okay.
Billy Joel go-to. What age did you move to that valley? And how far away was that from Pittsburgh?
Pennsylvania is a deceptively big state. It's about a 6-hour drive from one side to the other, 6.5. And I moved to the Lehigh Valley when I was in 8th grade, so I was 13.
Ooh, I love it when you get to call it the Lehigh Valley. That's cool.
The one
Sounds
and
elevated.
It really does.
And your dad, was he a surgeon at this time yet?
He had finished his medical training. Yeah, so my dad was originally an engineer. I was born in California in Silicon Valley, and then he decided to become a doctor. So that's when we moved across country to New Jersey, then Pittsburgh, then mainline area outside of Philly. And then when I was entering like 8th grade and then high school, Lehigh Valley. And then that's when he was a practicing surgeon.
Oh, wow.
So you had a lot of things that are very not desirable for a kid. First of all, you're other, you're brown, but then you're also moving around nonstop. Because even if you're a tall honky like me who moved to a lot of schools, the start over is rough.
But Philly has a big Indian community, doesn't it?
It does, but where I lived, not at all. It was very small. There was maybe a handful of other South Asian kids in my school. My brother and I were amongst the only ones that I knew, and it really was kind of isolating. But actually, moving around a lot, I kind of liked it.
You did?
For me, it was a chance to reinvent myself. My brother and I would have these conversations about like the way we fit in or didn't fit in, and every time we moved, it was a chance to try something different.
Another
Course
angle.
correct.
Yeah, exactly. If you think about it, it's kind of sad because we knew that we weren't going to fit in, and this was us strategizing new ways to like make friends. That's where he realized that being funny was a way to get people to like him, and it was like strategies for overcoming our brownness in a way.
Your brother, Yash?
Yeah.
Yash, who's a year and a half younger than you. Yeah, he was like cute and funny and into Rubik's Cube and really smart, and in high school was thriving.
Yeah, we had always been really good students, but as a kid, I was the one who naturally just loved school. I mean, I was super nerd. I was voted to student council every year, and like my art was always like principal's pick.
Okay. Well, you sound
you were
popular.
an artist?
Yeah, so I was a very artsy kid. I was always drawing, always writing, always reading. I got grounded for reading fiction once.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
Oh, my.
What was the barred book you were reading?
You know, I don't even remember.
Probably Karen. Karen, Babysitter's Little Sister.
That's your favorite
Yeah,
series,
those are my favorite. If I had been banned, oh my God, that's horrible.
That was your life.
Yeah,
the
it was my whole life.
Babysitter
Yeah.
Karen.
How did you fantasize without fiction?
I didn't stop reading fiction. So my dad banned me because I was reading fiction and I didn't know enough about simple machines and how they worked. So he grounded me from reading, and then I was only allowed to read books about simple machines until like he would like quiz me and ask me questions about how they worked.
Did you retain that?
No.
Do you know the 5 simple machines? Oh,
No, I feel like I blocked it out of my memory.
Okay.
And to this day, if somebody's like, well, how does this thing work? I'm like, I have no idea. Like the internet, it's magic. That's just how it works.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then I would just sneak in books when he wasn't around. So I like kept reading.
Rebellious.
He must have been gone a lot, though. Someone pursuing a medical degree and then
Yeah.
practicing. Was he out most of the time?
Yeah, he was. So my mom stayed at home, and it was mostly my brother and I and my mom. We were kind of like a cohesive unit.
And then when he would come back, temperature would change?
Yeah, when he came back, it was all business all the time. It was productivity. Always. So like in middle school, I had started studying for the SATs. I don't know if you're familiar with Johns Hopkins CTY, that program.
Nope.
I
We
did
know
the
Johns
Cal-
Hopkins.
Yeah, we love Johns
But
Hopkins.
I don't know about that.
Is that just a prep?
Yeah, Center for Talented Youth, I think it's
Oh,
called.
God.
Yeah. I think it's all in the name.
jealous?
No, don't be. I'm jealous that you don't know.
Well, I did have to go. I did do a SAT prep, but that's just because I was bad at the SAT. So I did end up going to a Kaplan class, but that's not Center for Talented Youth.
No, that doesn't sound
That's
nearly
like
as good.
very lame.
And they were not calling Duluth the Duluth.
I know.
Yeah, okay. But really quick, your dad, he was born in California. I thought for some reason your grandparents on his side moved from India to
Yeah.
Canada.
So my grandparents, they were both born in colonized India and then watched India's independence as teenagers, got married, raised a family, and then I think my grandfather must have been in his 30s or so. They both decided they were going to leave India. So they were already settled, and he was successful, and he gave all of that up. There were laws in India, foreign exchange laws at the time, that prohibited you from bringing your wealth into a new country. So he had to give all that up and decided that he was going to move to the West because he noticed that in his career, there were limitations. So management was all filled by white men from the West. So he grew up in poverty, and it was through his own determination that he was able to get out of his circumstances. And then I think when he saw that there was a ceiling in his own country, he was so offended by that and upset by that. He thought that if he moved to the West, then he wouldn't have those limitations. As his granddaughter, looking back on that, I'm like, oh, that's not exactly how that worked out for you. So he landed in Canada, and the reason he chose Canada over America is he had this like litmus test. So he didn't really understand how Indian people would fit into America's racial hierarchy. So he went to Canada and America and was like, I'm going to go to 3 different diners in each country and see where it takes longer for me to get served. And he waited
It's a
longer.
really flawed experiment because even if I go to 3 different cities, I'm going to get 3 dramatically different service times.
Yeah, this is not scientific at
If I
all.
go to the South, it's going to take a fucking year to get something done.
Well, especially if you're brown at that time.
Sure.
Yeah, and this is the 1960s.
Yeah.
So Canada had shorter wait times. So he noticed that servers were a little bit nicer. Not that Canada is this utopia or anything, but that's why he decided to move to Canada. My father was about 9 when that move happened.
Okay, so he wasn't born in California. I thought I heard you say he was born in California.
No, I
She
was born in
was.
California.
You were
Yeah,
born in California.
I was born in
Thank you.
California.
Okay. And then your mother, what age did she come?
So my dad grew up in Canada, and then when he was, I guess, in his early 20s, he decided he wanted to have an arranged marriage. I didn't know that story until much later. I just assumed that my grandparents sort of forced him to have an arranged marriage.
Okay.
But my grandfather was actually very opposed to the institution of arranged marriages.
Because he hadn't liked the wife he got saddled with.
I wouldn't put it that way. So his own parents actually had a love marriage, which is what we call.
Right.
I don't like that verbiage.
I don't either. I think if we're going to say arranged marriage, that's just marriage, you know, in the context of our history. So
Right.
if we're going to like specify that it's a specific type of marriage, then I think it makes sense to say love marriage.
For sure.
but
It's good to differentiate. It's just such a weird.
it is.
Well, because since it's being positioned as antithetical to the other
To
one,
love.
that the arranged one doesn't have love, right?
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah. But most certainly the arranged marriage didn't have love as the impetus.
Correct.
Yeah.
Well, love of stability.
And love of wanting to have a family.
Yeah.
Sure. So your grandfather, though, he wasn't up for that, but he did oblige your father.
Yeah. So then my dad went to India to find a bride.
Have you heard the details of that story?
Yeah.
Like, how does one go to India and procure this?
From my understanding of it, basically, like they put out some matrimonial ads. I wish I could see what that ad looked like.
Yeah.
But then also there was family networks involved. So you put out the call to all the relatives, and then they put out the call to all the people they know.
Because you're shopping within your social strata, I
Yeah.
imagine.
Yeah.
That's very important in an arranged marriage.
Yeah.
Where in India?
North India. So my dad's from the Delhi area.
And from her point of view, what was that experience like? Terrifying? You're getting a husband you've not met, and you're going to another country you've never been to.
I mean, it must have been absolutely terrifying.
Yes. Unless she's like you and she loves a new start.
Yeah. You know, she's the only one of her siblings who made that choice. Everyone else had strong roots in the city. I always wondered why she made that choice and why she decided that this is what she wanted to do.
Is it possible she didn't make the choice that her parents did?
No, she wanted to, because she was actually previously engaged to somebody else, and her father had helped broker this. But then when she saw how their family treated the future husband's sibling who had mental illness, she didn't like that. So she actually broke off that engagement.
Okay.
And then this was the second arrangement. And I think my dad was actually supposed to marry one of the other siblings. And my mom was like, let me meet this person. And, you know, I think she was interested in moving. I wish I knew now what moving meant to her, like what she associated with the West. In India, there's this image of the West and America as the land of opportunity, you know, the American dream. It's
Sure.
where anyone can move and make it. That advertising is very successful.
Yeah. And not false advertisement.
I would say that it kind of is false advertisement.
How so? Like your father, your
Yeah.
grandfather, the dream they were pursuing, they achieved.
They did. But what is sort of eclipsed by that, there's a couple of things. One is that in America, that dream is not accessible to most people. We see the massive wealth inequality and racial inequality and the gap there. There's certain people where it's more possible to achieve that dream, right?
Sure.
The other thing that it eclipses is sort of the history. So the historical context is that in the late 1800s, Asians were banned. The first racial-based immigration ban was actually against Asians.
Chinese.
Yeah. The Chinese had come to help build the railroads, and then they started becoming an economic threat. So Congress passed these laws to ban entry from Asia and then took away, all sorts of rights from Asian laborers who were already here. And then I think it was in the early 1900s that there was now a racial quota in place. So the ban was weakened or lifted, and then a quota came in. So that quota system stayed in place until the Civil Rights era, so until the 1960s. The law that changed, it was the Hart-Celler Immigration Act of 1965, and there was a similar act passed in Canada in 1967, which is what enabled my grandparents to come here. That was really a major wave of immigration, and that's what allowed a lot of Asians into Canada and America. There was a story woven around this creation of this new Asian American professional class. In the selection system, the criteria was that immigrants had to have skilled labor.
Yeah, they wanted educated professionals.
Exactly,
Yep.
exactly. So
Yep.
it was a creation of this professional class chosen from people who have social privilege back home as well. Then they're coming into a country that has a serious history of slavery and racial segregation. Growing up, I didn't know this history and I didn't really know how I fit in. So yes, while it was more possible to achieve these things, we also didn't understand the story that was woven around this and that it's not possible for all people of color and why it was possible for us. So the story that was created around this was called the model minority myth. It's the stereotype that all Asians, I think we all know the stereotypes, that all Asians
high achieving academically, financially, the family values, they don't get divorced.
Exactly.
That's tricky though, because that's a stereotype and a statistical reality.
Here.
Yeah. Asians over-index
Sure.
on all other ethnicities in this country.
Yeah, but the difference is that it's not because it's some innate.
Oh, right.
Yes.
And that's the
genetically
part-
we're not different.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's the part that gets eclipsed. The systems have changed. There have been so many more ways of immigration since then. So we have such a diverse population.
Kids, many
And
generations.
Exactly. And so Asian Americans have also the highest income inequality and disparity of any ethnic group.
Meaning within.
Within,
Yeah, there's a bunch of very, very impoverished groups.
Yeah.
And then there's some really high achieving groups within this enormous blanket statement of Asians.
Right.
Yeah, as we get further and further away from that first wave, the stereotypes become less and less relevant at all. Everyone just becomes ultimately American, but the stereotype still hangs.
Yeah.
Which is a problem.
Exactly. Because that stereotype was used in the 1960s to argue, and it's still used to argue, that look, if this group of people of color can succeed, then why can't the rest of you?
Well, I think that's a great point. And then you quote in there from U.S. News and Reports where we get our,
We
our
get
college
so
rankings.
much.
Yeah.
So many lists.
Yeah, 65 or 67. They use the term model minority. And yes, it starts getting weaponized to say, well, clearly then for Black folks that aren't reaching middle class or Latino immigrants that aren't, clearly you can because look at this group of people.
Right.
Yeah.
And it does get weaponized.
Yeah. And so that's why there's that caveat about the American dream, because when you use the ability to climb the hierarchy for one group of people and you use that to deny rights for others, it's maintaining the status quo. It's disabling people from achieving that idea of the American dream.
I had one curiosity about your kind of overarching thought. Sometimes I interpreted what you were saying as this was a game plan that has been executed, as opposed to, in my opinion, where life is chaotic and we are all self-organizing complex systems. That first thing that happens is like, well, if we're going to let people in, let's let people in that could benefit the country. So then you get this really lopsided entry from highly educated Asians coming here. That's like step one. Now, is it your opinion that they were like, well, let's do that, and then we can also then leverage that against all the other groups? Or does this one thing just happen? Let's let in people that can benefit the country. And now this big ripple effect stems from that.
I think you're right. It's not this diabolical scheme. Another part of it was the pressure in the Cold War. The Soviet Union was pointing to American racism and saying, they're so hypocritical. They call themselves a democracy, but look at the racism there.
Yes.
So this was also in response to that, being like, we don't want to be that. The climate was changing and the civil rights movement was happening.
The government funded like jazz expeditions to send around the world to say, look at how we're treating black folk.
Yeah.
And a response to that is so wild.
There was a big push. And I think that actually came from, a positive place. It was a well-intentioned policy and idea to open up the borders and change that. And I think the story that was created, though, was based on observations about this professional class. But the way stereotypes work, it became the entire story. And it just flattened all the history and removed all of that. And then this story just stuck.
So I think it might be interesting to first start with your brother, since that is the chronology of how you decide to write this book, which is like you first decide to open up about your brother's story. And then based on the response of that, you recognize, okay, I'd like to tell the even broader story. Let's go over some of the pressures. It's very interesting to learn your story and then also to know Monica's really intimately and how much they're different.
Although the thing is, what's unfortunate, you know the details of my life intimately, and now we're learning the details of your life, so we can see the difference. But anyone else who's just looking at us would say we're the same. Oh, we're both doing well, and we...
Both hot.
We both look great. We both like jumpsuits.
You have great fashion.
Most people at a glance would place us in the exact same category, life, whatever, which is wrong.
Obviously, there's some enormous expectation. Do we think it's fair to say of all first generation or no? We think it's specific?
I think it's probably fair to say that in general, immigrants and their children feel...
Most immigrants went through hell to get here.
Yeah, exactly. Regardless of race, I can only speak to my experience, but I imagine that all immigrants and their children feel an immense pressure to belong and then also to maintain the connection.
Your parents' dream in a way.
Yeah, there's a guilt.
Yeah, there's a guilt. And you're the embodiment of all of their hopes and their dreams for coming to this country and what they gave up to be here. And I think as children of immigrants, we feel that.
Sure.
I think that's pretty universal.
Yeah. Now, your brother, though, can we tell your brother's story?
Yeah.
And by the way, I would really encourage people to read stories about my brother that you wrote in Jezebel. It's really, really beautifully written. As we said, he was kind of thriving in high school, or would appear at least.
I mean, he was everything that I wanted to be. He turned into my role model. We were very high achieving kids, but then when I got into high school, I sort of burned out and I started to rebel. And I was this artsy kid. I realized I had a talent for running, so I was really into cross country. I wanted to be an athlete. I wanted to do cross country, see how far I could go with that. And I wanted to be an artist. I got into art school for college, and those are the things I wanted to do. And in my household, that was not okay.
So I was going to ask, was that the rebelling was just your interest you were pursuing?
No. So the rebelling came from not being allowed to do those things and the anger that I had to be this thing that I wasn't.
What did they want for you?
My dad wanted me to go into something very professional, business or law. I don't think I was really ever going to be smart enough to go into medicine or engineering. So I don't think that was the pressure for me, but it was the next best thing.
There's a lot
There's
even
tears.
within that.
Yeah, there are tears.
Yeah.
There are
There's
tears.
a little maybe misogyny. I can't imagine your brother was truly smarter than you. I'm sure you guys were pretty comparable.
Yeah, it was a different type of intelligence, I would say.
Yeah.
And he would definitely have agreed with that. But he also just had this brilliance that he could just create things that were science fiction to me. So I burned out. And I was angry too. And there was misogyny. Being an Indian girl, there were a lot of pressures on me that my brother didn't deal with. He was allowed to date. I wasn't. I had to pretend like boys did not exist. If there were boys in my vicinity, if it wasn't school related or studying related, it was no, you cannot be there. We're going to keep you at home.
From your mom too?
It was really more from my dad.
Okay.
My mom was actually really liberal and open, and my dad was a lot more conservative, which is interesting because he grew up here, and I think there's a perception that people have that in America,
You become so progressive.
yeah, but I found sort of the opposite can also be true because of sort of the way that race can be gendered.
Oh, for sure.
So a lot of Asianness can be feminized. And so from the male perspective, if there's a threat to that, then you want to use that power and kind of get that out elsewhere. So I feel like that dynamic was also at play.
Were you on the side talking to boys or doing anything?
Oh, yeah. I was sneaking them into my basement.
Oh, wonderful.
And I was
Okay.
I forged my report cards. I lied about my grades.
Oh,
I was
wonderful.
failing at school.
Oh, boy. Okay, great.
So I got a C in pre-cal. My brother was 2 grades ahead in math, so he was in pre-cal 2 at the same time.
And he's a year and a half younger.
Yeah, and he was a year and a half younger. And I got a C in it, which means they made me retake it, which a C isn't.
Yeah,
that's not failing.
C in pre-calc's kind of a win, actually. Yeah.
So I retook it, and the next year, because I was so annoyed at both the administration and my dad, I sat in the back of the room and I read the play Faust. That's all I did the whole year. And I got a C.
That's
I think I got a C
incredible.
plus. I mean, I was such such an asshole. I feel bad for my teacher because he was a very nice guy. But that's just the point where I just completely shut down and refused. And I got rejected from pretty much every college I applied to. So that dream of sending me to the Ivy League. No, I went to Pitt. University of Pittsburgh.
University of Pittsburgh. Okay, so that's not in the same strata as Penn.
No, but I really loved Pitt, and I'm so glad I went there.
And what did you major in there?
So I studied English writing and finance.
Okay. Finance was to appease your parents?
Yeah. When I got to college, I was like, okay, I'm going to straighten out, but now I'm going to try to do it for me. I was sort of out of my father's control and was like, I want to do well, but I also want to do what I want to do. So I was trying to figure out how to do both. So I sort of became this overachiever, but it was an effort to prove to him that I was capable of taking control of my life.
Being spectacular on yet a different route.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it was still kind of playing into these expectations,
Sure.
but like trying to do it a little bit differently.
Yeah, it's weird. It's like you want to send a big fuck you to him, which would really just to be like a barista and write poems.
Yeah.
Yet you're like, but I'm still going to be fucking exceptional.
But I still really want to be great. Yeah.
Okay, now your brother's, so he goes to Carnegie Mellon and he does major in computer science, exactly what we would hope for any young Indian boy to follow the computer science route.
Yeah.
And he does, and he's spectacular at
He
it.
is.
And his dad just completely enamored with him.
Yeah. So unlike me, Yash, he hit all the boxes. I was the black sheep of the family, and he was like the golden boy. What I didn't understand then and what I see now is that I think the pressure of that really crushed him because he didn't know what it was like to fail at something and be okay.
Well, if he failed at something, he would be valueless because his value proposition was succeeding academically
Exactly.
or professionally. And the cracks start to materialize in college, right? A roommate of his discovers a suicide note and then brings that to your attention.
Right.
Is that an enormous shock?
It was completely out of left field. So when I graduated college, I went into management consulting, my dad's vision for me. And my first week on this new project that I had just started at the consulting firm, and I got this call at midnight and I ignored it because it was a number I didn't recognize. And then I got a call again and I answered, and it was one of my brother's close friends. And he just said, "Hey, we found Yash's suicide note." And I thought he was joking. The thought that that could be serious did not register with me. So I started getting mad at him. I was like, this is not funny. Do not joke about this. And he was like, I'm not joking. Yash wrote a suicide note and he's missing and we're looking for him. He took his car. Do you know his plates? And I didn't know his plates.
Of course you didn't.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
don't know
like-
my own license plate.
Yeah,
number.
Right.
exactly.
And at the time, I was like, oh my God, I'm so stupid. How could I have forgotten his license plate?
Right.
After that, I made a point to remember, you know.
Get tattooed on your wrist.
Right. And I was alone in this hotel room just pacing around. I called my boyfriend at the time and woke him up and was like, what do I do? Do I call my parents? And he was like, yeah, of course you call your parents. I didn't want to because, I mean, no kid wants to call their parents and be like, your son is trying to kill himself right now.
Yeah.
And I did call them, of course. And then they drove in the middle of the night and went to Pittsburgh. I mean, I honestly don't know how much time passed, but I called my brother and left him so many voicemails and he called me back. And he was just like laughing. His voice sounded like it wasn't coming from his body, like it was coming from somewhere else. And he was like, Prach, I'm fine. Don't worry about me. I'm fine. And I flew to Pittsburgh a few hours later and I saw him in the psych ward. He admitted himself and he was there for the next 2 weeks. So my dad told me, when you see him, don't cry because if you cry, then he'll feel guilty.
Oh, Jesus.
The logic that happens.
I know.
when you
I
don't
know.
know
When you're
what
trying
you're
to
doing.
control something you
Yes,
can't
yes,
control.
yes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so when we hugged, my brother was sobbing in my arms and I was holding him so tight and tears were flowing down my face, but I refused to let him see me cry. And now I wonder in that moment what we were teaching him about his own mental health. And the fact that he had gone so far down this path and struggled so much with thoughts of suicide, the pressure that he felt to keep that in, and the way that even in the aftermath, he learned that he couldn't express those feelings and he couldn't be sad. He couldn't admit that he needed help. He couldn't talk about depression openly. It just wasn't safe. It was seen as a weakness.
Yeah.
And we all sort of affirmed that by not making the environment safe to talk about it.
Or show your own vulnerability and
Exactly. And now I know statistically, like at the time we thought, how could this happen? Everything was so perfect. He was doing all the things that we're supposed to do to be happy. And this is also why I sort of objected to the idea of the American dream, being possible is because I think in America, we're taught the story that if we work hard, then we succeed. And then if we succeed, we're going to be happy.
Right.
Success and happiness are not synonymous. We're taught to think that way because that keeps us productive, right? That keeps us in this cycle of labor, of high achieving, of working really hard. But what happens when you get that job, when you get that status in society, and you're not any happier? Then what do? You turn inward and you blame yourself for that sense of failure.
I did something wrong, obviously, if I'm not happy right now.
Exactly. And I think we were all dealing with that. And we didn't understand that these things that we were accomplishing, they did give us stability and they did give us status, but they didn't give us inner peace. And they actually hindered our ability to be ourselves with each other, because what we had learned to do was block out anything that was seen as a flaw or a vulnerability, because we were constantly trying to project this image of success and fit into this image of success. It was heightened as brown people, as people who wanted to fit in and belong.
Yeah.
Stay tuned for more Armchair Expert, if you dare. So he does navigate that situation. He graduates, he starts different businesses, he works for Intel, he works for different companies, he's very talented. And over that period, I guess it'd be between 21 and 27-ish years old, some other things evolve, and then you guys stop seeing eye to eye. You guys go from soulmates and best friends to quite a chasm between you. And based on your supposed feminist views and his support of men's rights, and having even written a piece anonymously to be submitted to a men's right anthology,
Yeah.
he kind of goes down one path, but seems pretty opposite of your path.
I show this dynamic in the essay, and in the book, I really explore how this happened and why. In our home, the dynamics were not great. We projected this image that we were supposed to project, but my home was volatile and it was chaotic, and we witnessed and experienced things it's hard for me to talk about, even though I wrote a book about it.
Can I tell you something? That's
Yeah.
so common.
Yeah.
You feel very safe in your room writing the book, and then you're out in public and you don't have control of this situation.
Exactly.
You have half the control. I have half, and Monica has half. There's 150% on the table here. It's a much different
It's harder,
scenario.
yeah.
Yeah.
But I hope you know, of all the places, this
I
is
do
the
know.
one.
And I've heard you speak candidly, about your experiences and home life as well. So I know that this is a good environment.
I like people more who've seen some nice violence in their household. I relate a lot better to people who've felt that atmospheric pressure change on a dime. And how do we appease this out of control rage man right now so that he doesn't further harm us?
Than people think. I think a lot of people have some level of experience, even if it's not full blown violence. At least the temperature change.
Well, let's just look at the
Sure.
statistics, and Body keeps a score. 25% of all romantic relationships have physical violence in them. 40% of all children have experienced physical abuse. So it's not a fringe experience. In fact, it's
This is why it's
borders
so
on.
important to talk
Yeah,
about.
yeah.
This perception that defined my existence adds this pressure that makes it even harder to talk about. I'm very aware, one, of the perception of this model minority that I'm supposed to maintain. And then two, just being brown, being a person of color in America, I'm very defensive about wanting to, I know that people look at you and they expect a certain thing, and I feel the pressure of that.
Well, I would imagine that you have to innately and intuitively know that if we are not succeeding and having happy families, we're going to join the other groups in this country that are minorities and the view that goes along with that.
Exactly,
So
yeah.
the stakes are quite high because you can visually look in the media and see how black folks are getting treated.
Right. And I mean, that's also part of why we have to talk about all this stuff. Keep maintaining that status quo, maintaining that hierarchy is messed up for everybody.
Oh, yeah.
Everyone loses.
Can I maybe just state it for you?
Yeah.
Dad was really mercurial and he was physical. He was very abusive to mom. You were very careful to not use the word abuse until quite late in the book. It's very, very kind and respectful to Dad, but still, we got to say, he scared you. He scared everyone, and he was very controlling.
Yeah.
And so that's what you grew up being modeled, and so did Yash.
And it was the one thing that we didn't know how to talk about, and we began to talk about in very binary terms, where I began to use the word abuse. And my brother saw that as judgment. And I understand his perspective now because we can't see the people that we love as black and white because we love them.
Yeah.
And they hurt us. So how do you reconcile those two things? And I think at the time we couldn't. And we didn't have the vocabulary to talk about it because also it wasn't just family. It was our entire culture. It was our entire sense of belonging. It was home. In white America, we didn't fit in. The only place we fit in was family. And if we don't fit in there, then where do you fit in?
Yeah.
So it was like this existential threat to address this issue. And I began addressing it. And no one else in my family could or wanted to. And they saw me as the threat, the person who challenged that sense of home. As imperfect as that home was, I was the one threatening it.
Not to defend them, but also it's a deep, deep feeling of if you threaten this image we've created, you're threatening our safety.
Yes.
So we're not safe if we're as fucked up as our neighbors because we're not permitted to have
We're
any
not
flaws.
allowed to be.
Exactly. And that invites in all sorts of things like surveillance, violence, gossip, you can be ostracized, humiliation.
Telling on each other like the communist system, ratting each other out, exposing one another.
No, this is a stereotype. I was about to make a stereotype.
Oh, I want to
too.
hear you finally make
I was
one.
going to say it's a bit of a gossipy culture as well, in my experience with my grandparents and their circle, which is really the only Indian group dynamic I knew. It was quite gossipy, but that could have just been my grandma.
Also, I think that's family. Families are very
Right.
gossipy. My
That's
mother was
true.
just
Yeah.
visiting. Let me fill you in on how we're basically out-achieving
And it becomes
them
an
morally.
extension of your family when it's this small amount of people in white America. It's like, oh, these other
Yeah.
Indian people, I guess, like
There's all
act as your
these
family.
rungs of competition. It's like you're competing with society at large, but then you're also competing within your own family network. You're competing against your siblings, against your cousins, your aunts, your uncles.
Plus, when you are in a family system where people don't talk about their feelings, they have to come out
Yeah,
somehow.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
instead of talking about your feelings directly, you talk about other people and what they're doing. And that's how we sort of signal what our values or our own feelings are in a safe way
That's really
rather
true.
than just telling somebody directly. And it becomes this sort of toxic, passive aggressive way of communicating.
Yeah.
So you started pushing back, and then your brother didn't appreciate that, didn't agree with your assessment.
Yeah. And I think this came between us because he saw his role in the family as the one to try to keep everybody together.
Yeah, he's got to take over where your dad leaves off. in his
Yeah,
mind.
he learned how to be funny to sort of fit in. So in our family, he was a peacemaker. So that's what he was trying to do, was hold us all together.
He's like, why can't you just shut up about this?
Exactly.
Yeah.
It was kind of like that.
I've
And-
thrown out of jokes to ease this tension with
I
mom
don't
and
have any
dad.
more jokes. Can
I'm
you
all out of
stop?
fresh out jokes. Could you take your foot off the gas?
Yeah.
yeah. And I was like, fuck no. Right? Just like, no.
I got a lead foot.
You're my best friend. Defend me. And he did to a point, but it just got too hard for him too. And then he had also then absorbed all these messages about masculinity. Like he was trying to belong in a culture where he learned you're not supposed to talk about your feelings. Crying is a weakness. And he, I think as a South Asian man in America, felt an extra pressure to perform this masculinity because of the way that it's racialized. Indian men are seen as the stereotype is like, oh, you're nerdy.
Submissive.
Yeah.
Well, you point out in the book, which is good, it's like you have Big Bang Theory as an example. Everything in the media thus far is, the Indian dudes on a computer helping Schwarzenegger break into the compound.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So one of the things I do in the book is I tie in history and research to show how these stories and stereotypes came to be. This one came from when East Asian laborers were in this country in the early 1800s. The laws around the time pushed them into jobs that were mostly devalued by white men, so domestic labor type jobs. And then that contributed to the stereotype of seeing Asian men as more feminine. And that was a way to dissuade or prevent interracial marriages and mixing. So that's actually where that image sort of comes from, and it persists today.
I have a very fringe theory on all this, just to add another layer, which is I also think all these masculinity tropes are really, really present in how white America views the other ethnicities. So from the outside, I would say, of all the ethnicities, white folks seem to be pretty open to Asians being here and pretty supportive of that. White men feel very threatened by black men. They're fearful of them. That's driving the guns rights issue. It's driving the police brutality. And it's all these levels of being emasculated. So yes, Asian men don't emasculate white men. Black men emasculate white men. And you see the fear of each other directly proportional to that feeling of being emasculated by another group.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this shows the relationship between racism and white supremacy and patriarchy. So the way in which these systems reinforce each other and replicate. So these pressures then create these gender dynamics within our own subcommunities and cultures that are just the same exact things from, white supremacy coming down, and then within our own communities, we're seeing that happen too.
Right. Well, like colorism as a result of
Right.
this. I think we need to say, though, your brother gets what I would call pretty fringe male rightsy.
Yeah.
Like, I wouldn't enjoy having a beer with him at whatever point.
I mean, I didn't either. We became estranged. He turned into somebody I didn't recognize. And I will never know or understand the man that he became. I didn't like that person. And I also don't believe that that's who he really was. I feel like it was a confluence of factors. And I really do believe that it was all this pressure to succeed and to be seen a certain way, and the pressures of masculinity on him, and then the inability to deal with what was going on at home and make sense of that reality that turned him into that. I mean, I know he wasn't happy.
Well, his final act is really telling of how he was feeling.
Yeah. He pursued a leg lengthening surgery, and we had been estranged at the time, so I didn't even know that he was doing this. He told me that he was in Italy working on some new startup company, and I was like, well, that's a little weird that you're in Italy for that. But, I didn't really question it because he did so many eccentric things. Then a few months later, in November, I got a call from my dad, and he said, Yash is dead. And in that moment, I thought maybe Yash killed himself.
Right.
Sure.
Yeah, so that was my first question, like, was it suicide? And my dad said no, but he did something really stupid. And my dad wouldn't tell me what that stupid thing was. I didn't know. And then my uncle called me and said, do you know about the procedure? And I said, what procedure? I don't know what you're talking about. So then I called my dad again. He said that my brother had a leg lengthening procedure, and he died from post-surgery complications, like a couple months afterwards, pulmonary embolism.
I think what's really, really interesting about that whole last chapter is the correspondence that you uncover about people challenging his decision to go pursue this.
Yeah.
And how dangerous it is to be smart, truly. Because he is pushing back and he's acknowledging, I can see where you would think this, but actually it's not about that. It's about this. He has whipped himself into an explanation of this that he believes, which no one around him believes. And that to me is the really heartbreaking moment of all, because who isn't guilty of a delusion that you're smart enough to create, and out of fear of just saying out loud what you're afraid of or what makes you feel vulnerable and scared to live in this world.
Yeah, you can obviously speak better to this than I can. I feel like men are often pushed into that kind of space where when we don't give them the ability to talk about their emotions, we tell them it's not safe to talk about your emotions. You have to intellectualize everything in your decisions. And I think as a South Asian man, as a brown man, that pressure doubly existed, because then you're taught through the model minority myth that hard work can solve any problem and that your intellect is innate to you and is your way out of all your problems. I think that he had learned early on through both messages from society and then within our own family system that he always had to come up with solutions on his own, that there was not help available for him. When he had attempted suicide, I don't think that he really got the kind of mental health care that he needed afterwards either.
Right.
Well, and he was on and off SSRIs, which I'm sure he thought was a weakness when he was on them. And then he wasn't following the best program probably to help.
Yeah, there's a big gap in our mental health system for Asian Americans, for people of color in general.
You said they're 3 times less likely to go to therapy.
To seek therapy. And then even when they do, 85% of psychiatrists in this country are white. Most don't have the cultural competency to understand the experiences or even begin to really do the kind of effective work that you can do in therapy. So I think for all of these reasons, he couldn't get the help that he needed and didn't have the kind of role models or support that would have helped him, I think, go down a different path. And even though I could have been one of those people, because I had been diminished within the family system as a woman, and as a woman seen as breaking the family, I was the last person that he would have accepted help from in that regard.
Yeah, it might have felt to him like he was conceding you were right the whole time.
Right. Oh my God.
It's so heartbreaking.
I'm so sorry.
One part of it I got curious about was what was happening for him mate selection wise, because I feel like that's such a driver of why we do anything.
I think his perception was very different from the reality of it. It's interesting. When I interviewed his friends and asked them about this, a lot of his friends saw him as a sort of god. They were like, he could talk to women and they all wanted to date him and it was so easy for him and we were all so jealous. And then like one of our good friends who's of Indian origin said Yash was sort of the epitome of what I thought that I could be one day. Like in my best self.
The
like
high water mark.
Yeah. And it was so interesting, the contrast between that and how Yash saw himself. So he couldn't see that. All he saw was the tall, somebody who looked like
the Dax Shepard.
yeah, like essentially you. He
yeah.
saw you and was like, that guy can get all of this and I can't get that and I'll never be able to get that. And I understand that experience because as a brown girl, I felt that way too. When I saw a tall blonde white woman, I could see the power that she had in a room that I would never have. I had people say things like that to me and I don't know if like,
100%.
So this is a very common experience. I actually had a guy say to me once, well, you're pretty for an Indian girl, but Indian girls can only be 9/10 as hot as any white girl.
Yeah. These are things you just will never unhear too. Like
Right.
you can't unhear
Yeah, her
that.
parents work at Dairy Queen.
Yeah, my parents worked at Dairy Queen. They didn't, but like that was a nut.
Dad
That
was an engineer,
I
mom
can't
was a
date her.
computer.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Can't date her because of this. That's not even real, but yeah.
They're not real, and yet then they shape our realities. And you internalize that. Whereas I think Yash had internalized a lot of these messages. The reason that happened was because he fit so many of the quote unquote tropes as his natural self. Like he was smart at science and math. He was naturally brilliant, and he was so many things that conform to the stereotype. And so I don't think he really ever developed the ability to entangle himself from that. So he began to see these expectations placed upon him as who he is and who he has to be. I think because I really at a young age couldn't fit into this mold and started to reject it. And I began to ask questions about, well, why can't I fit in? Why is this so hard for me? What is going on here? That I began to separate these two things and see that there is a stereotype at play and see that I was never going to fit into that and that I don't want to aspire to fit into that. Because when I did fit into that, I didn't actually feel better about myself.
It wasn't enjoyable.
It wasn't enjoyable. You get this little bit of validation and then that goes away.
You're living for the day the grade comes out and it's an A.
Yeah.
Or the day the acceptance letter arrives. But nothing before those moments is pleasurable or necessarily fun.
And those things also depend on other people's assessments that are kind of made up in a way, right?
Yeah, it's all made up.
These are all metrics that somebody decided mattered. Now we're competing to be seen this way. But like getting a good grade doesn't mean that you are a kind person. It doesn't mean that you're happy.
It doesn't mean you'll be successful necessarily.
Right. It cannot define your whole worth. And I think
Yeah.
so many of us are raised to see these things as that.
Let me ask you though, do you think this problem just inherently solves itself in that all second and third generation kids will be liberated from that? Or do you not think so?
I don't think that those pressures will really go away. But what I do think is that they also don't have to be as intense as they are. Like, I think that we're in a moment where we have now a couple generations here. We have the ability to understand the history, the context, how these stereotypes were created. And we have a choice now whether to say, do we want to keep perpetuating this? Or can we start talking about this stuff and start talking about our feelings and maybe find a new way to do things so that we don't burden the next generation with this quite as much? I can't control all of these other people, how they think about me, but I can control how I choose to respond to that and how much of my self-worth comes from that and change my relationship with the idea of external validation. And I think if we can teach the next generation to do that less, to teach them that their value doesn't come from these achievements and what they accomplish in the world, and instead comes from within and focusing on fostering like our relationships with each other and talking about our feelings, then we are healing people.
Yeah, it's just so much is stacked against all of us. I mean, you look at what's happening on dating apps and how 93% of women are choosing these 4% of men. There's all these crazy forces that you would hope to transcend, but are still very much a part of our reality. Like what your income is going to dramatically shape who you're with and your academic achievement's going to do. The force of mate selection is not stopped. It's
Right.
still going to asymmetrically benefit people who achieve these things.
I think it will, but at the same time, you know that dating advice, it would always kind of annoy me, but it was like, well, if they don't choose you, it doesn't matter. Like you got
Spared.
Yeah, exactly. And I'd be like, well, I wanted to get chosen by that person.
Yeah.
Right.
But it kind of is true. If somebody doesn't see your worth or your value as a person because you're not tall enough or you don't make enough money, like fuck that person. That
And you don't
person's
wanna
not
be with that
But the
person.
only thing, if we believe this data that's out right now, that
Yeah.
like Scott Galloway's toting, and a lot of different behavioral scientists are talking about, 96% of males can't just decide, well, then who cares that I don't have a date?
But here's the thing, you don't need to date 96% of people. You only need to find one or two people who get you. And it's just so hard in general to meet somebody who you connect with like that. There are always going to be those things. And I think there are certainly a lot of people with social advantages to basically have a bigger dating pool. But even within that, meeting somebody you really connect with, I think is hard.
Yeah, it's just interesting. The prevailing advice right now for young men is they used to be in college at a rate of 75% of the population of colleges was men. Now it's under 40%. So less are going to college. Dating has transitioned to not the workplace, but these apps. On these apps, 96% of the men on the apps can't get a date. These are like epic problems. The advice really quick is just go to college, achieve some stuff, and then you will be a part of that 4%.
It's not go to college and achieve some stuff. It's be a person worthy of a relationship. It used to be the opposite where men had complete control and power. So they just picked, I want this hot girl, and he got her. And now that is changing because women have a lot more power and a lot more agency. It doesn't mean that men...
I think it's gotten worse, Monica. I think what you're seeing from at least the data of the apps is that the 4% who have the money and the height, they're getting now all of the women as
It's not just
opposed
money
to...
and height, though. I've looked at these apps. It's what is this person going to offer? Not money and height, personality. Because I do think for a very long time, men didn't put that much effort into a personality because we all did value other things. We valued their income.
You think women have stopped valuing that?
I think women who are successful on their own don't care if the guy has a ton of money because they have money.
Well,
so
there's-
they just need a good partner.
But again, there's all this very, very conclusive data that women only date laterally and above. So I disagree with that. Statistically, that's not actually what's happening. Men date laterally and below. Women date laterally and above.
Yeah, I don't
So
know.
I don't know. I want the same solution.
Yeah.
But I think some of the questions aren't really being addressed. I think there's very strong forces that were kind of, oh yeah, that'll work itself. Well, how's that going to work itself out? How on earth do we address that? It scares me.
I certainly don't have the answer to how we address that. I will say though that one of the things that I wanted to try to do with the book is show how we have these large systems at play that shape our realities. Maybe this is overly optimistic of me, but I do believe that in our personal lives, when we start to make slightly different choices, when we start to, hold the people we love accountable, when we start to make decisions that like, okay, I'm going to date beyond these criteria. When we start to make small decisions like that, they do have ripple effects.
Yeah.
And I do think that that is how we begin to change these larger cultural issues and systems that you're talking about. I don't think that that's the only way to do it. Certainly not everyone's going to wake up tomorrow and start doing that. But I think when we start having these conversations and understand how these pressures are making people feel, then we create a dialogue that can shift the culture.
Yeah. I wish actually personality was obvious on an app. I don't
Right,
think it's
that's
really
why I
that
hate
easy.
apps.
Yeah. How does one know if someone's really funny and a great listener by looking at their profile on the app? I just think the technology is like kind of compounding an already terrible problem.
Yeah. I wonder what the percentage is of people currently in relationships that are from apps.
Yeah, I would love to
versus
know
not,
that too.
because I think that makes a difference.
My mom is in the app category,
yeah,
as you know.
and it's
yeah.
working out.
Yeah, she's very happy.
Yeah.
Last thing I would like to ask you about is once you write stories about my brother and you see the reaction, I imagine it was very scary to publish that.
It was.
But then again, I bet you had the experience where so many people felt seen by this article and related.
I was blown away by that response. I heard from immigrant moms who said, I had no idea my kids might be struggling with their mental health. And now we're going to start talking about mental health in my household. I heard from Asian boys and men who said, I was going down a very similar path as your brother. And this essay convinced me not to and to find a different way. Wow. And now I'm talking about my mental health, and my friends and I are talking about it, like with other boys. I heard from sisters who were estranged from their brothers or had really complicated relationship with their brothers, and it helped them be more compassionate to them about what their brothers might be going through and find like a new way to start talking to them. And when I saw that response, I realized that I had thought I was so alone in dealing with these things, and that we were all dealing with them and we all thought we were alone because of the tremendous shame that we all carried with these things that we perceived as failures. That's when I realized like I had to tell my full story. You know, one of the things that I wanted to do with the book is show how normal the kind of confusion and struggles that we're dealing with really are.
What is it, do you think, Monica, if you had to explain why your father, Ashok, was so not stereotypical towards Nurmi?
It's all I keep
and
thinking
you?
about.
Like what? Because I feel like within there is some hopeful recipe of confronting it.
Yeah, my dad is not like your dad. I have to just be very honest about that.
And he came in his 20s, early 20s?
For his master's. And I guess we'd have to ask him. I think he would say he was in love with his mom.
His own mother.
Yes. And really with such deep respect, and still speaks of her that way. And he has an older sister. He very much respects her too. And she was super successful. And he was the baby. And kind of, which I think is funny now, he was sort of the black sheep.
The goofball.
Yeah, like he was sort of the wobby wob rascal type.
Okay.
And
love wobby wobs.
Yeah.
And I love a show.
But he was not the one achieving. The
So
other
maybe he
people in
didn't-
his world
Maybe
did.
he had already surrendered that he wasn't going to be the big star of the
Well,
family.
I think he
or
just probably early on.
wasn't
he
his
was like-
identity.
it wasn't his identity. Because I think even when he moved to the States, it was kind of like, I guess I'll try this type thing. It wasn't, I'm definitely going to the United States and I'm doing this. It's just his personality. I think I got lucky. And I think the maternal relationship had a huge impact on him and his feelings towards women.
Yeah, he seems very egalitarian.
And maybe also being the youngest, he's had to just kind of bop around with what other people are doing and not care. I don't know. But I mean, sometimes he does like yell and stuff. It's
Well,
not like,
everyone's got to yell occasionally.
I guess.
I mean, your dad sounds awesome.
Thank you. He is. I am very lucky.
Her mom's fucking radical too, though.
Well, she's not taking any shit. Not that anyone lets anything happen and when they're in an abusive relationship. It's so complicated. But she's running the ship.
I think there are a couple things. So in my family, I think it's very interesting that like my grandfather, for example, started identifying as a feminist when he was in his 80s. He was sort of the traditional Indian patriarch. When I became a journalist, he would start calling me up. He would tear up when he talked about Malala. And he was like, Prachi, I have this list of Indian women I want you to interview. And like he would like loved powerful Indian women. And I was like,
Yeah.
Dadaji, that's really not what my job is. It's not just interview famous Indian women.
Yeah.
You're at the
I
one
wish.
woman hype squad for
Yeah.
all.
We would talk about feminism, and he was like, God's a misogynist. You know,
Wow.
like he would say really radical things. And this is my dad's dad. I think what's so interesting with this dynamic is I always felt like I couldn't tell my story because I was so afraid of confirming stereotypes. But in telling my story, what I realized is that those stereotypes also formed roadmaps for members of my family. My dad, as a boy, trying to fit in, especially when there were no South Asians or very few South Asians here, these roles became roadmaps. So there's a complicated dynamic there that happens. There's this flattening that happens of being like forced into this role that you don't necessarily want to be, but you also don't see another way to be. But then also in their relationship, there was a real power differential, right? Like my dad grew up here and he had citizenship. My mom was an immigrant, and that put her in a much more vulnerable position.
What was the age difference?
There's no age
There's no
difference.
age
Yeah,
difference.
same age. But there is that power differential, right?
She's
You're in a new
joining his
country.
life. He's not joining her life.
You don't have your family here. You don't have a job. You don't have the ability to have a job because of immigration status at first. And so there were all these factors at play that created this. And then it sort of confirmed socially the roles. But then also like I saw how she was forced into that role, both by society and by expectations of people around her and, you know, people in my dad's family as well.
Yeah. Well, the book is so beautifully written. You're such a great writer. I'm sure you already know that, but it's just very elegantly and beautifully written. And
Thank you.
I don't think it could have been easy. I didn't start telling stories probably about my dad until he was passed. I still struggle when I tell stories about my mom.
It's essentially a love letter to my mom. My parents are still alive.
And are they together still?
Yes. I agonized over this so much. And I'm struggling right now with a lot of shame over talking about this and exposing it. So if my brother were still alive, I would not have written this book. I would have hoped that we would find a way to reconcile, or at least just whatever relationship we could have had. I would not have been willing to sacrifice that. But after he died, I had so much grief and rage over how he died and the way that he died. And I really believe that if he had a book like this, if we had been able to have these conversations and he could have disentangled his identity from these pressures, that maybe he would have chosen something else and he would still be alive. And so I felt this urgency, and there is this pressure that I see as we get more visibility in this country, especially Indian Americans, who are the wealthiest immigrant group, have this visibility in society. How are we going to use that? Are we going to use that to help dismantle racism and show how race is constructed and operates? Or are we going to use it to, like Vivek Ramaswamy and the GOP, justify oppression and say we are in a meritocracy and then pass on these pressures to the next generation and make it even harder for them?
Well, I'd also imagine there's an additional pressure on you, which is this notion that, Indian Americans should be very grateful at all times because they've come here and, as you say, they've become the wealthiest ethnicity. And so they should be grateful, and to be critical of anything here seems ungrateful.
There is that.
Like that you don't have the right to be critical.
So in that pressure, I think, is just continuing to increase. So I think we need to deflate that a bit and begin opening up about these issues, because I'm not the only person in the world or in the community who's dealing with them. And I do struggle too with the estrangement aspect. I find that there's so much stigma and shame around estrangement. It's also really common. So 1 in 4 Americans are estranged, and 40% of Americans will be estranged from a family member at some point in their lives. But I think the way that we talk about it is we focus so much on reconciliation that we frame it as a bump on the road and as families will just reunite and come together and we'll live happily ever after again. But that's not the reality for most people who live with estrangement. And sometimes it can be a really affirming or positive choice. Sometimes that happy ending is choosing yourself.
Yeah, I feel like the steps are kind of like you get the confidence to say, there's only one version of a relationship I want. Here are the rules by which I'll play by. And then if that person refuses to meet you there, at that point, for your own self-protection, sometimes the best option is to go then I'd rather not go down this path with you because I feel terrible after every time. I'm going to prioritize me over you.
Yeah, because it really takes a toll on your mental health. I was destroying myself. I was having suicidal ideation. I was fantasizing about suicide, and I couldn't keep doing this to myself. And the reason that I wrote all this to my mom is because I have so much empathy for her and so much compassion. And after my brother died, I thought about what would happen if one of us died, before I had the chance to tell her who I really am and why there is this distance between us and why I can't have the relationship with her or be the daughter that she wanted me to be or that she needs me to be. And I didn't want her to die or me to die without sharing that with her. I didn't know how to say it to her, so I had to write to her. And I had to explain to her this distance, in my opinion, is created by this story that I think she had to buy into to survive and make it in this country. It's a story that I was raised on that I ultimately came to reject. And we live on opposite sides of that story. So I wrote the book as a letter to her, and all of my explanations are in service to this relationship. So all the history that I draw from, all the translation that I do about who I was then and who I am now, it's not in service to white readership. It's all in service to this person who I love, and it's centering my mom.
Yeah.
It's funny, though, because I read an interview with you, and the interviewer immediately wants to know, has it been repaired? That you cannot resist, right? After all that person's curiosity was immediately, then are you not estranged anymore? Because that would be the worst.
That makes people feel safe.
Yes, yes.
But it also, I think, perpetuates the shame and stigma over estrangement, because it makes people feel like the choices that they've made to create this distance are wrong.
And it's only an okay ending if there's a reconciliation.
Exactly.
This is counter to that, but it's funny is I was at that point with my dad at one point, and I had a therapist, and I said, I think I'm getting off this ride. And the therapist said, you're entitled to do that for sure. I think the only question you just have to ask yourself is, are you the type of person that doesn't talk to your dad? And I was like, I don't think of myself as someone who won't talk to my dad. Like, oh, that's interesting. You kind of like use my identity against me. And then I did. I don't regret it. He's also dead, so we got to repair a lot of stuff. There was like a very beautiful and restorative last few months he was alive that I am grateful for. But it is interesting that that was what the therapist asked me, which ultimately made me open to it.
That is interesting. I don't think my therapist would ever ask me that, to be honest.
Yeah.
But I also think that these things, there's no one-size-fits-all solution. It's
Of course
so
And your mom's
specific.
not my dad, and I'm not you.
I think around estrangement too, because we don't talk about it that much, I was always trying to find answers from other people. And ultimately, you can only answer that for yourself.
Yeah.
Well, and as you said, part of the myth is really great family values, high overachieving in academic success and financial and professional. And so if you reject the academic and the professional, the last thing is, yes, you're dismantling yet the third kind of tenet to it all.
Yeah, there aren't that many estrangement stories in general. And a lot of the ones that we do have are either written after a parent has died or they've reconciled. I don't think that I could have waited emotionally, and maybe this is selfish of me, but I knew that I would never be able to move forward in my life mentally, physically, emotionally, if I didn't write this. And it was part of my own healing from my brother's death in order to really live again.
It sounds like it's in defense of your brother's memory in a weird way.
Yeah.
It is, because his brilliance was really glorified and romanticized. Even at his funeral, that was the number one thing that people were talking about.
Yeah.
And I got up there at his funeral. Originally, I wasn't going to speak because I was like, I don't feel like I have a right to speak. He was estranged from me and was really angry with me. But then when I started hearing everyone talking about how smart he was, I felt really angry because I was like, he was so much more than that as a person. And I think if he had really known that and known that he was valued beyond just his intelligence or his work ethic, then maybe he'd still be here. So I read this poem that he wrote to me, this like nonsensical, fun, dumb poem.
Rhymes Prachi.
Welcome to the Prachi Prach was what it was called. And it was just like saying my name in various ways over and over again. Welcome you to the Prachi Prach. So I just got up there and read that poem. And it was like my tribute to him.
Well, what I admire is that, and I often tell myself here, I'm really open about things after they've happened, or I've worked through them, or I've come to my conclusion, or I've resolved it, or made amends. I'm very reluctant to say, like, no, right now, today, I'm struggling with X, Y, and Z. It's much scarier for me to let you know, oh, no, currently I'm struggling, not just after I've resolved it all.
Yeah.
I find it hard.
It acknowledges the uncertainty, right? It like requires that
Well, and
surrender.
it's antithetical to story. You and I are both storytellers.
Yeah.
And so a story needs an ending. And this is not. This is up in the air. You and your mother could be eating fudge at Mackinac Island next year. You might not be. We don't know.
Right. That's what I wanted to do with it, is show the honesty of what it feels like to live in this space. Because for many of us, when we are dealing with estrangement, that pain is ongoing and it's uncertain and it's unresolved. And we don't know when or how it will be resolved. Sometimes it goes until somebody dies or right before they die. And then we tell that story afterwards and we can offer that resolution. But when we're living with it, we don't know.
Yeah.
And there's no guarantee. I really wanted to capture what that felt like. So many of us experience that, but don't see that reflected in the media.
Yeah. Well, this has been incredible to talk to you and to meet you. And I, again, think the book's so beautiful. And I think so many people, as you say, 1 in 4 are estranged. I think this will speak to so many different people. And I think a lot of people have felt the pressure. It's called They Called Us Exceptional and Other Lies That Raised Us. It's out now. I really hope people check it out. It's been really, really nice to meet you.
Yeah.
Thank
Is there
you
anything
so
I didn't
much.
ask you that you wanted to talk about?
Oh, good question. I wouldn't mind talking about therapy a little bit.
Yeah, let's do that. Yeah,
Okay.
let's do that. Yeah, so what has been your own journey with therapy? At what age did you look into that, and how has it helped you?
So when I was in management consulting, that was the year that my brother attempted suicide. And then a couple months later, my dad attempted suicide. And I needed help. I was at this job where I was severely depressed, and I didn't realize that I was severely depressed. But I was pretending like everything was okay. So I would go into work. I would do whatever I could. I kept all my emotions in. I had like a per diem because I was in consulting and I was traveling. So I could eat at like fancy restaurants if I wanted to. I would go to the grocery store. I would buy a bag of grated cheese and then a big bottle of Yellowtail.
Oh, wow.
I came
What's
home.
Yellowtail?
Wine.
It's just this cheap wine. It was like $10.
I was going to ask how much you drink. You had different childhoods. We both love wine. We build a bridge on that.
Wine.
I do love red wine. It was low-class wine and cheese night.
Yeah.
I would go home. I would turn on Law & Order SVU. I would sit in front of the couch. I didn't even have a spoon or a bowl. I would just dig my hand right into the bag, drink wine, and that was my dinner.
Wow.
You know, I hate to say this, but as an addict, that sounds good to me. Like when I watch these movies where someone's down and out and they're down, I'm like, yeah, I kind of like that. Because you're doing everything you know you're not supposed to. You're like, but I don't give a fuck. So here we go. I'm going to eat
Yeah,
this
but that's
bag of
exactly
cheese.
right. Like, I don't give a fuck. I don't care about my life. I don't care about my health. I don't care. I'm just eating this and drinking this until I can stop feeling.
Yeah, that was my version of numbing out. And then I'd go to work and I'd be completely numb there. But when I saw with my brother and my dad struggling, I realized that I was heading down the same path and I couldn't do that because I saw what that was doing to them. And so that prompted me to start to get help. It was actually a woman in the HR department who was like, so you would be qualified to have, 6 sessions of therapy covered by the company if you want to do that.
How nice of her.
At first I dismissed it because I was like, I'm not suicidal. Isn't that what therapy's for? Just like talking you out of killing yourself. And
Off a ledge.
she mentioned it a couple of times and things were starting to feel pretty bleak. And I was like, you know what? It would be really nice to talk about this with somebody because I didn't tell almost anybody that this was happening. Like I pretended everything was fine, even amongst my close friends, most family members. And it was just like this double life that nobody knew about. So therapy was the first time where I started talking about it. And then I thought that that's what therapy was for. It was like your one place to tell the truth when you couldn't do it anywhere else.
Right.
So I was just like, oh, this is a person who will validate me and like listen to my emotions because no one else in my world will. So it was helpful for me. And then I stopped after those 6 sessions because I was like, I'm not paying for this out of pocket.
Yeah, the wine and cheese is like $9.
Yeah. A few years later, when I was in my relationship, there was nothing like acutely wrong. We weren't really in love anymore. It was just like a very platonic friendship. And I was dealing with all this other stuff. And my relationship wasn't really offering me anything either. And I was just like, is this what marriage is going to be like? Because I don't think I can do this. So I started seeing a couples therapist with my partner at the time. And that was helpful, but it was like for a very specific reason. And then we broke up and then it ended. A couple years later, when the dysfunction in my family was really heightened again, I saw a woman, her office was near Central Park. So she was an older white woman. It was like this kind of stereotypical, like what you used to see on TV where you just like sit on a couch, talk about your problems and like a person listens
Looks at you,
and
yeah.
looks at you. I just like always felt like she was judging me. She probably wasn't, or maybe she was.
We don't know what's in her head.
We don't know. It just wasn't doing anything for me. In all these experiences, especially that one, I started feeling like, oh, is there something wrong with me? People talk about it like, oh, this is the cure-all. It'll help you. But it wasn't really helping me. When I had my falling out with my brother, that shook me so deeply because this was the one person who was my world, who within my world never made me feel like I was wrong. And now he treated me just like everyone else did. It broke me, but it was also the moment where I decided I am not going to be that thing. I am now stepping into this new identity, and I have to find a way to live with that and make peace with that. I realized that maybe it would help if I saw a therapist who shared in my identity. And maybe that would make a difference. So I started looking up Indian American therapists in New York City, and I found this woman who was Indian American, children of immigrants, identified as a feminist, and was a Buddhist. So she had the spirituality, and I didn't know if it would be helpful or not, and I didn't really know what to expect. But we began to develop like a relationship, and I began to like trust her. It sounds so obvious, but like therapy, you're so vulnerable and you're so defenseless. And if you're seeing somebody who can't understand you and really see your experiences, it can also be a place of violation. It can be a space where you open up and somebody comes in and tells you that you're wrong or makes you feel that you're wrong. And I'm glad I didn't have that experience exactly ever, but it is this very fragile thing. And I think when we talk about therapy as a one size fits all, or just like, oh, go to therapy as if that'll solve your problems. Well, it won't unless you find somebody who you can really trust and who really gets you and sees you. So I was finally able to develop that kind of a relationship, and that sent me down this journey. And I would say like a spiritual journey, honestly. We've been working together now for almost 7 years, and I still see so much value in it. I'm a totally different person now. Or maybe I'm the same person, but more authentically myself.
Yeah, my dad summarized it best for me when I called him, and I was like, yeah, I don't like AA in California. It's not like Michigan. I don't think I'm going to go. And he goes, okay. He goes, how many bars did you go to before you found your favorite bar? I'm like, I don't know, 10,000. I've been to so many fucking bars. And he's like, maybe you put half that much effort into finding a AA meeting you like. Maybe you try a bunch. And I would say that's similar, with therapists. And I too can relate because I would prefer that my therapist is an addict. We have such a specific fucking take on everything that I need that person to know that take.
And you don't want to have to explain yourself in this space.
Yeah.
Yeah, you want that shorthand, I think.
Yeah.
Oh my God, well, what a pleasure.
Yes, this was lovely.
Yeah, thank you
for
so much for
coming.
having me.
Yeah, it was so fun. I wish you so much luck. I hope everyone gets They Called Us Exceptional and Other Lies That Raised Us. Out now. Get it, read it. It's beautiful. Thank you so much.
Stay tuned for more Armchair Expert, if you dare.
Stick around for the fact check. Because they're human, they make lots of mistakes.
What's your shirt mean?
It's a riddle.
Is it?
It's not really a riddle.
It's not.
It's just a design. I mean, it could be a riddle, but I don't know it.
Does it have anything to do with the rotundras or whatever it's called, the way Paris is laid out in those pie divisions?
Maybe.
You know what I'm talking
It's
about?
Parisian.
Yeah.
Brand.
Maison.
Margiela. It's fancy.
Oh, I don't know how to speak fancy.
So what is the Paris thing?
The whole city's laid out in a
Oh,
Arabiati. Arondax.
Let's see how to say it. I know how to spell it.
I don't know how to spell it nor say it.
Arrondissement. This is the word for the city sections in the large
Arrondissement.
towns. Paris, Lyon, and Marseille. Those towns are divided up into sections called arrondissements.
Oh my God, that's really hard to say. We're never going to be able to say that.
I know it much less now that I heard him say it than I thought I did.
Well, maybe.
I don't know. I mean, you said it was a riddle, and I love riddles.
I think they have. I don't think they have this many arrondissements.
Our mutual friend Delta makes up riddles.
Like you.
I guess you're right.
Yeah.
I didn't even connect those dots.
You make up riddles.
I do. She's more prolific.
Okay.
Hers are coming in pretty hot and fast.
Give an example.
They're so bad I can't remember one. Like they don't add up, right?
Okay.
So, it's one of my favorite things because it's hard to keep a riddle you made up straight in your head. So she was like, you go roller skating and she knows she's got to make these words perfect for the riddle to make sense. So now she stalls out for a while. Okay, yeah. You go roller skating and you can wear, I don't know what the punchline is, but inevitably I can't solve the riddle. And then she tells me the answer.
Okay. This is just a way for her to have control.
No, she sincerely believes these are good riddles.
Really?
Yes. I'll say, because I want to reward the effort.
Uh-huh.
But I'm not going to lie and say this is a good
yeah.
riddle, right? So, I'm like, wow, that was really creative. It didn't hit for me so much. I didn't get that, that's the answer.
And she's like, Dad, I don't know. They sound exactly like your riddles.
That
so
you love.
I don't understand this.
That you
And
think
you're
are
gaslighting her.
So good.
Wait, that was going to remind me of something. Riddles. Tom Riddle. Voldemort.
Oh, he played Voldemort?
No, Tom Riddle is Voldemort as a kid.
Oh, Timmy Riddle.
Oh my God, you know so little about Harry.
I know, considering I've sat through the last 6 books at night.
I know.
I can't pay attention. I can't. I love the writing. It's so beautiful and impressive, but there's too many monster names and gibberish talk and spells, and this is the wiki-walkie, and they're playing cribbage, and here's...
They're not playing cribbage. Cribbage is for
Quidditch?
muggles. Quidditch. Yes. Oh my God. You'd have no respect. I've been watching them nonstop.
Oh, yeah?
The movies. I finished
in preparation
over the weekend.
for Halloween.
Yes. I've been in a Potter mood, and I watched all the movies, which the movies are fine.
Oh.
They're not.
Hot take.
It's not really. I think anyone who...
They all made $1 billion.
Well, they're made for kids, though, too, and you're grown up now.
Well, no. It's if you really love the books...
Right.
The movies are good. They're fine. They're fun to see the world, but there's so much left out. I mean, they can't put nearly the effort.
What they would have loved to have done in hindsight is to make 3 movies out of each book, like they did with the last one, too.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
so you just reminded me of something I was so curious about, and now I'm sitting with someone I can ask.
Yeah.
I, of course, saw the movie before I ever heard the book.
Right.
Or minimally, I saw the posters and everything. Like, I knew what Terrence Posner looked like per who was cast.
Daniel Radcliffe. Yeah.
And Hermione and
Oh, sure.
the whole
Emma
gang.
Watson.
And Ron Weasley.
Rupert Grint.
Right.
Friend of the pod.
But yeah, friend of the pod. But you went the other direction.
Yeah.
So what had you pictured?
Yeah, they
I
were
guess there was
a
a
mess.
dumb little cartoon character on the cover, wasn't there, of a couple?
Yeah, but those are just cartoons. That's just like,
Yeah,
that
you were
doesn't
picturing
affect it.
You were picturing a real boy.
What?
I wish I was a real boy.
Okay.
Even though he's a wizard, he's a boy. So why couldn't I also be a boy?
Oh, I wish he could. I mean,
Please call me a muggle. I know it's an insult, but it would flatter me.
it's not an insult. The insult is another word. We're not calling anyone that.
Well, there's a racial pejorative
Yeah.
for muggles? Uh-huh. Is it in the book?
Yeah.
Mudblood. I won't say. We cut it out. It's a mudblood, right?
Yes.
Why
but
can't we say that?
It's bad. It's like
But it's not.
no, but it is.
It's made up, though.
Whatever, Dax. Can you just get on board
So I'm
with
trying.
it?
Actually, right now, I don't know what part's real and what's
Remember
not.
what day it is?
I absolutely do. When I was journaling this morning, I thought, I wonder if she'll have had her shot before she gets here or if she's going after.
It's not a shot. It's a pill.
Did you already take your pill?
No. I can feel it in
You
me.
better not abuse.
Well, I feel like you're gonna be like you're feeling rascally, like you're gonna test the waters.
No. I'm here to support you and inquire about your very favorite topic, Terrence Posner.
Okay.
Yes.
Go on.
So, who were you picturing?
And were you in love with Harry?
No.
It wasn't a.
Come on, you didn't have any sexual. Did he ever get sick in the book?
Good question.
You ever have diarrhea or
Were there any characters you were in love with?
No.
No.
It wasn't that. It was the world was so spectacular and so transformed. Like sometimes I still every now and then
think you could still go there? That's
like I
real.
wonder, am I a wizard?
Yeah.
Maybe like
Kind of.
there's 0.1% of me that thinks.
Have you ever been like at a zoo and the glass disappeared and then an enemy ended up inside?
No, I wouldn't be parcel tongue.
Okay.
Parcel tongue is when you can talk to snakes because I hate snakes.
Right.
So Harry is parcel tongue
Okay.
and can speak to snakes
Yeah.
like Voldemort because they're connected ultimately.
Yeah.
Spoiler. And that's why he let that snake out.
Sure.
But
But he also
am
was
not.
able to do something with the glass too.
Right.
But wait, you're really afraid to say the fake negative word
I
out
don't want
loud?
to say it. Why?
Because it's completely made up in a fairy tale.
Yeah, but it's a bad word in that world.
I know, but we're not in that world. We're in the real world.
Well, we're talking about that world.
Okay.
Okay?
Very interesting. But you said Voldemort out loud.
Yeah,
You're post Voldemort.
well, no, Harry and Hermione and Ron, they say Voldemort. If you don't say it, it increases the fear.
Well, and they defeated him, so he's gone. So it's
Oh,
like talking about
spoiler,
Hitler.
I'm not there yet.
But anyway, what I pictured, she describes them very specifically in the book. I think the worst casting, even though I'm really glad this person was cast because they did a great job, but Emma Watson is way, way, way too cute to be Hermione.
Okay.
Because Hermione in the books is like not cute at all at first.
Okay. She blossoms into a
She blossoms.
sexy,
But
beautiful
Emma was
woman.
always so cute.
Yeah.
She's so pretty now.
It's gonna happen anyways when they got rich.
Yeah.
They didn't get rich.
The kids did.
Kids did.
No, they didn't.
Yes, the actors.
Oh.
Oh yeah, I meant the actors.
Oh,
like
I
by
thought you meant
the seventh
Hermione
movie.
and Ron and
But Harry, because I'm reading the books. Harry's super rich. He goes
Harry's
to,
rich.
goes to that bank and they give him so much money.
Yeah, he inherited a small fortune from his dead parents.
Yeah, it looks like a big fortune. He walks into a room and it's stacked like fucking 10 feet tall in the movie.
Yeah, you're
He's
right.
loaded.
He is.
Oh, there's a Duck Duck Goose. It's totally off topic, but needs addressing.
Okay.
I know you don't read comments, so I can play this game with you. I'm going to give you 3 guesses because there's 3 people that are coming up nonstop. If you had to describe Wobby Wob, who would you say he looks like? What famous people? I'll give you 3 guesses.
Well, is it connected to Harry Potter? So is
Not
it-
at all.
Oh.
That's why I said Duck Duck Goose.
Okay, but
Completely
then
off
it's just
topic.
not a Duck Duck Goose at all. It's just a complete different topic.
Well, Duck Duck Goose Me is opposite of Ding Ding Ding.
Right. That's right.
Yeah.
Okay. Can I have a hint?
No, I mean, just look at him. Do you think he
Well,
looks
I
like any
don't-
famous
no, then
people?
no, I don't.
Okay, great. Let me look at you, Rob. I mean, I wouldn't have thought that either if I hadn't read this stuff. So today's post,
I've gotten one of them before.
only one,
Uh,
because there's hundreds of.
there's a
people.
couple. yeah, there's a couple I've gotten.
The biggest takeaway of the Kimmel episode, because I posted the picture of those 2,
Yeah.
is, are you ready for this? So many of Elijah Wood,
I think because my hair is longer, I got that more.
Tobey Maguire. People want you to wear a Spider-Man outfit for Halloween, which I would like to see.
Okay.
Those work.
Yeah, they work.
And then Karen Culkin,
yeah.
Succession.
I can see that. I can see that.
These are
about
all good, though, Rob. These are all good-looking guys.
Yeah, they are.
I'm happy with all of
Yeah.
Okay, well, actually, there is a ding, ding, ding to Harry Potter in this episode. This is for Prachi.
Prachi Gupta.
I was realizing when I was rewatching the movies in the 4th book, they have a ball where they have dates, basically.
Okay.
There's 2 Indian characters in the book. They're twins.
In Terrence Posner?
And I have a bad feeling about them.
Okay.
And I wondered why. And then I was like, oh, I guess just because that's my own self-loathing. But then when I was watching the movies, I remembered Harry and Ron go with them as a last resort.
To the dance?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then they
Their
don't-
backup plan.
Yeah, and then they just don't want to dance with them and just let them sit there. And I was like, oh my God, no wonder. And it all reinforces. And this is part of what we talked about that a little bit on this episode where she was saying, someone told her an Indian person can only be 9/10 as hot as a white person. And then obviously the whole episode about her brother and needing to conform to this white ideal. Anyway, it just reminded me of that.
I don't want to lessen or make light of your experience. I do think you made the right call. People often either get to be smoking hot all through school and then that's it. And then the rest of their life it's downhill. Or you've got a quadrillion admirers now. And I think that's the right trajectory.
Yeah, but it just affects your whole life.
Oh, big time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And my point is, it is reinforced. It's not just made
Sure.
up in our heads. And this was just an example. It just reminded me.
It's a combination of in yourself and confirmed outside.
Right. Anyway, that was a ding, ding, ding for Harry. Okay, so you went to a wedding. How was it?
It was perfect.
Great.
By the way, second wedding in Oregon that was a home run. And both for the same reason. Much different vibes at both weddings, but very homemade. And that's so special.
Yeah, it is. It's nice.
I don't know if Hannah did it or her friends, but they had embroidered every napkin with your name
Oh, that's so cool.
of all the guests.
Cute.
And look, they did it on a budget.
Yeah.
And yet, that right there to me, I was like, well, this beats any venue anyone could ever rent, anything.
Yeah.
It was at Brad's family's home,
Okay.
impossible yard, probably 3 acres, front of the house, redwoods, back of the house, river.
Ooh.
So you couldn't have been in a more enchanted place to get married.
Nice.
And then just the vibe and all the friends from Houston and her sister Sophie and those 2 dancing together. And all of it was just so lovely.
That's awesome. Weddings are beautiful.
I'm going to give a shout out to a restaurant in
Okay.
Portland. Well, first of all, I had that incredible meal on the airplane on the ride up. I don't know if you saw my post.
I saw, yeah.
Yeah, so first it was like a blessed culinary trip. Great meal on the way up. And then first morning, and I'm going to make fun of Trevor, Erica's brother, for this. We're going to go out to eat Some of them are already out at a coffee shop. Meet us here. We walk over. I'm saying I looked up breakfast next to the hotel. There's a place right over there called Cheryl's. It's supposed to be good. Trevor starts laughing. He goes, oh my God. His girlfriend said, watch, they're going to want to eat at Cheryl's. It was a big laughing stock. Like it was very pedestrian to go to Cheryl's.
Oh, no.
I start teasing him about being the bourgeoisie and hoity-toity.
Sure.
He's got a great sense of humor. He's laughing. Well, we go. Unanimous best breakfast any of us have had in a decade.
Wow.
So Trevor, I don't remember what he ordered, but I know what he ate. Crow. It's incredibly good.
Wow. What did you get? Yeah.
Corned beef hash, extra crispy, 4 over easy eggs on top.
Oh, my God. Yum.
Went back the very next morning, had the exact same meal.
It's fun when you find a local spot.
If this thing existed by our house, I feel like I would go eat breakfast a few mornings a week. My father, I was remembering, he went to a restaurant every morning for breakfast on his way to work.
Yeah, like diners.
Doesn't that seem foreign, the notion of like going to breakfast as a meal?
I do sometimes. I like it.
You do?
You should try Millie's. Millie's Cafe in Silver Lake is really good.
Yeah, this place is like a breakfast institution. That's very obvious. And they're turning people. Like they're getting so many people served.
Yeah, yum.
Oh, fucking Cheryl's. Well done. Tip my hat to
Fun.
you. Yeah, feather in the cap of all Portlandians. Really beautiful. Everyone should check out Cheryl's. What'd you do this weekend?
I had a very low-key weekend. I was and is still a little bit, but so much better. Having this like crazy back pain that I think is connected to ovulation, but I don't know. But that kept me down a little bit. But it's okay.
I'm sorry.
But
so did you watch a bunch of shit?
I watched a lot of Harry. That's sort of what I did.
Okay.
And then I did a couple cooking projects.
What'd you cook?
I made a chicken.
You love to make a chicken. You make a whole chicken, right?
This one was not a whole chicken. It was chicken parts.
Okay.
And tomato. Alison Roman, obviously.
Okay. AR.
Was really good, but my apartment does smell like chicken.
Well, that's preferable to fish.
It is. I have my Dyson fan
Cooking.
air purifier going. It's working.
Okay, great.
Slowly but surely. I didn't really put it in the right spot. I realize I don't think I know about fans.
And airflow and
Yeah,
stuff.
I don't understand that. It's very mechanical.
Do you have a window in your kitchen?
Yeah, and I always open that.
And you need to put a fan that's blowing the air out into the alley, sucking and blowing out into the alley.
So in front of the oven?
Window. No, in front of the window.
Okay.
Because if they made all the air color, you see these in science experiments, and you watch what happened to the air in a room with just one fan going, it all will get sucked in there really quickly.
Okay. So I'm taking the air from outside?
No, reverse. You're taking the air from your kitchen and shoving it outside. It'll create a low pressure sitch in your kitchen, which will then draw air from the rest of your apartment under the cracks of your door from the hallway, wherever the air is coming into the apartment from.
Okay. So, sorry. So I'm putting the fan blowing out. Okay. Interesting.
Yeah. That's what you want to do.
Well, I still have it in the wrong spot then.
Okay.
I've been moving it around, but I never did that.
Just kind of baking it into the walls.
Yeah.
And making it bounce off things.
I guess so. Okay. Now I know. Now I'll put it there. Great. So, one thing I wanted to mention, I'm going to do a draft. It's fantasy football time.
Oh.
I'm not doing fantasy football draft.
I was going to say that happened probably a couple months or a month ago.
I'm not doing that because I don't care enough.
You don't believe in
football.
that? Okay.
I don't believe in that. But I am doing a Taylor Swift draft.
How does this work?
Right. So there's a podcast, I talked about it on here, called Every Single Album, Ringer podcast. And they did it on there. And so now I'm going to do it with a couple friends. And it's scary. So the way it works is you're basically creating your perfect playlist, like 12 songs. But they can get taken. So it'd be like, I say Clean is my first draft pick, is my first pick. Then you go.
Yeah.
So you can't take Clean.
Okay.
And you might say blank space. And I probably wanted that. So I'm going to be mad.
Okay.
And I can't have that on my list.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah.
So it's scary because I won't get everything I want.
Mm-hmm.
They do this on the show and it's fun to just hear. But I thought, well, we could make it real by posting the list. Like once we do it, post the list and have people vote on what is the best one.
What happens once you have your list?
That's what I'm saying.
When they were playing it on The Ringer.
Oh, it was just for fun.
You pick your list of 12.
Yeah. Well, and some, you don't get all of them.
Okay. And then somehow, and then it's over. There's no like competing
For
somehow.
them, it was over. That was
Okay.
just like a fun
Okay.
activity they did.
Right.
But I'm saying we could add more stakes to it by either making those lists on Spotify and then
Okay.
seeing who gets the most listens.
Okay. That's interesting. There
Yeah.
is, okay. Some
Or
data.
just post the list on Instagram and see what people say is.
Won't it
would they
perfectly
pick?
mirror if I were to type in Taylor Swift
Mm-hmm.
and then artist comes up on Spotify and I go over there, it'll list in order of downloads, streams.
Right.
So I can go and look at this list and pretty much guess with pretty good certainty what one's going to win.
But you won't get all of those.
I know. I'm just saying the data is already in on all the songs in a sense.
She got a real deep bench, right?
Real deep.
Deep.
So I think we're going to try that. We'll figure out a way either via Spotify playlist or on Instagram to get a sense
A
of
winner.
to get a winner.
Okay.
I'm scared I might cry
Oh, well.
because I have a few
especially-
songs I really want.
Also, if you do it in this coming 2 weeks.
I am gonna.
Okay.
Yeah.
I am.
So I'm probably going to cry. But I'm excited too. There's one song I really hope I get, but I think Molly wants it also. So
Oh, boy.
scary.
Well, you know how these drafts work in fantasy football?
Yeah.
Like, often you get a budget and the
Okay.
players are priced. Like, and this would be my point. Like, if you want Tom Brady and you're in a fucking draft, you might have to spend $12 on him out of your $20 allotment.
Oh.
So if I go to Spotify and I see, her number one song is like 4 billion downloads versus number 2's 2 billion. That
Yeah.
one should have more value, and there should be some way that you have to pay a price to get something of more value.
That makes sense. But see, so that's why when they did it originally, it wasn't what's the most popular. It's what their personal, this is my favorite.
I get that, but because you're going to turn it over to the audience to vote, it
Right.
seems like it would probably trend towards whatever has already been voted on.
Perhaps, yeah, but I think we're all in the right spirit of it, of not just that. We want it to be our list.
Okay. All right, great. What's the name of my song?
Yours is Wildest Dreams.
Wildest dreams of...
It's a good song.
Oh, it is.
It might be on mine. We'll see.
It's funny to hear. One of the songs came on in the car while we were in Oregon. Mm-hmm. And Kristen said to the girls, this song's about Harry Styles.
Oh, it's probably Style. Yeah.
Oh, it's called Style.
Yeah.
It's like when I knew you were trouble when you
Oh, that's
walked
Trouble,
in.
but yeah. It's probably about, I don't remember.
So they must have dated? Or
Yeah, they dated.
Oh.
That's what's so fun about this world.
She's dated everyone?
No, not just that. Some are about, there's a Vault song that came out on one of the newer ones, and it's called When Emma, something about Emma. I
Our
forget.
Emma?
Well, so there's like speculation on which Emma, and a lot of people think Emma Stone because they were really good friends at that time when she wrote this.
Okay.
When Emma falls in love.
Yeah, when Emma fell.
So, and I don't want to trigger any defensiveness. This is a sincere question.
Yeah.
I want your real analysis of this.
Okay.
Why does everybody hate John Mayer for having dated every famous person? Yet no one hates Taylor, and she's dated every famous person. Why do you think there's a huge difference?
They hate John Mayer because of Taylor. It's mainly the Swifties. He dated her.
I'm surprised they didn't stick together because they have the kind of, they both are,
What?
well, they both love dating getting at every famous person.
Well, okay, that's also not fair because a lot of people who are famous date famous people, right?
Yep.
Like it's
And others collect it.
But no, I was like, she's dated probably as many people who are famous as you have. But
Oh, no. I think she's
Yeah.
far surpassed.
No, I
yeah.
don't think so. Her
Circle.
songs are about them, so we know more. But I know
Yeah.
a lot of I know who you
Some of the funny business.
I know you've dated. You've dated a lot of famous people.
But I will admit that I was attracted to that. Now, there's other people like Amy Adams who's not out, she's not date heartthrob movie stars. That's just not what she does.
Right.
And then there's some of us that do. I'm not throwing rocks in a glass house. I'm
I
admitting I
see.
too.
Oh, okay.
So I'm just saying those two
But
seem
no
to
one
be
hates
apex
you
success
for
at it.
that. No one hates you
Well,
for
people
that.
did hate me for that. That's exactly what that thing on the wall you're looking at is. People don't like that I was with famous people because they didn't think I was hot enough. I just think it's interesting that I do think for the many stereotypes for gender that, women are slut shamed, and that's definitely inarguable. That's the truth. I do think it's interesting that it's a weird reversal.
I don't know all the details of what people don't like about John Mayer. I know Swifties hate him. That I know.
Right,
But
yeah,
I
yeah.
don't know about anyone else who hates him.
Yeah, I do. And not from Swifties.
Oh.
But all the women love that Taylor, and I love it too. It's just interesting. I think it's
I don't
interesting.
know that people love
Like,
it.
I think if a guy is banging a bunch of people, at this point, he's going to take a lot of heat for that. Leonardo DiCaprio.
If he's dating like young girls,
Sure.
that's normally where this stuff starts coming into play, what people are mad about.
Yeah.
John Mayer is in that category.
Right.
She was really young when they dated.
But
And
Jennifer Aniston was much older than him, so that's kind of cool.
They dated?
Yes. Right?
No.
Yes.
I'll see.
I think that was one of his many.
Jennifer Aniston.
Paramours?
Post
Yeah.
Brad Pitt?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Post Brad Pitt? What
Yeah,
year?
this is why I know it, because I think when they broke up, he gave like an interview to TMZ on the sidewalk about their breakup, and I was like, oh,
2008 to 2009.
Well, I mean, he shouldn't have done that. That's stupid.
that's what made me I don't care who he's dating or hooking up with, but when
Yeah.
he gave that, I was like, oh, this
yeah, I
guy's-
mean, I don't think anyone thinks that's bad that they did. I didn't know that. That's kind of cool.
yeah.
I think it's only bad if they're like, 18 and stuff, and you're 35.
Right.
And that seems to be common for Leonardo DiCaprio, which is why people talk about it.
I think that's a John Mayer thing too.
It
Very
is.
young.
That's
Well, but
the-
Jennifer Aniston's older.
Yeah.
Right.
But I think
But
it's like
normal.
Kiernan. I think he's dating her now. And she's like 21.
Oh, Kiernan Shilpa,
Yeah, the
Mad Men
child.
yeah.
The
She was-
daughter and man.
Yeah. Anywho, but I know what you mean. I think a lot of her with the dating is more, well, ding, 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 a riddle. Like a lot of times now, or not now, but
Easter egg.
before, you would be kind of searching for who is this about.
Yeah.
Sometimes it was more obvious, like style.
Sure. She wasn't very
No. And Dear John.
opaque about that one. Who's John? Mayer?
John Mayer, yeah.
Okay. And Jake Gyllenhaal.
No, Jake Gyllenhaal, to be fair.
How many
and
more are there? So
That's what, see, this feels a little, because like, again, that's three people of fame.
There's a bit of stuff here.
Well, let's hear it,
hear
because
the
I,
Harry Styles,
Yeah.
Joe Jonas,
oh yeah, Joe, yeah,
JJ.
they dated.
Jake Gyllenhaal,
JG.
Taylor Lautner,
Oh yeah,
TDL.
oh yeah, that was so cute. That was really early days.
Calvin Harris, John Mayer, Tom Hiddleston.
Ooh.
This is just a Google
Right,
list.
we don't know
so I
for
don't know.
sure about it. I do.
Lucas Till, Matt
I've never heard
Healy,
that.
who I think is the
Is that the
1975
Owl
guy.
City guy?
No, the 1975 guy. Joe Alwyn.
Yeah, that's her most recent. He's not famous.
But they're broken up,
He's
and
an
he's
actor.
written. She wrote an album about him. Are they still together?
No, they were together for 5 years. Most recently,
Okay.
They just recently broke up.
And does she have a lot of songs about him now?
They've written songs together.
Oh, they have.
Her songs about him are like basically, sorry, we can't have a normal life. There's like a bunch of that because he
right.
seems much more like
He wants to be interspersed with the real world.
yeah,
Adam Young's the Owl City guy.
right. Yeah, everyone's really sad about the new breakup. Joe Alwyn, he seemed like a really good match
Okay.
and didn't work out.
Okay.
I think because her life is too big.
Yeah.
What?
Nothing. I just love how you talk about her.
Everyone should
I
listen
just
to
think
this
if they-
podcast.
listen.
You'll learn so much.
Here's what I think.
Okay.
If I was reading you a list of the Myers, what's his name? What did you just
John
say?
Mayer.
John Mayer,
Yeah.
and
You
how
know
he's
that
written
list?
13 songs about the girls he's been with. I think you would have a bad taste in your mouth.
He
about
has. All of his songs are also about people. We just don't.
it. Bodies
people,
of Wonderland.
Do you want John Mayer's list?
Yeah.
All right, we got Jennifer Aniston, Taylor Swift, Katy Perry, Jessica Simpson, Jennifer Love Hewitt, Minka Kelly, Vanessa Carlton, Renee Zellweger, Kristen Cavallari, Kiernan Shipka,
Yeah.
Sheena
so-
Marie, Rana.
So we're running out of really famous people. Unless
That's a lot of famous people.
well, we got to more with her, but that's fine. I'm not trying to say one's better or worse. I'm just saying they're very, very comparable. It's a great comp.
Right, but I think he does get away with it. The only people who don't like him are Swifties, or that I know,
Yeah, I think there's other elements to the John Mayer thing
with him,
Too.
people not liking him.
with like age and
Right. Same with, I think, any man who's getting shamed for it. Like, your lovers
Yeah.
were normal age.
Well, Ashley was much younger than me. 10 years, I guess.
But that's not, these are like 20-year gaps.
But
I gotta say-
45 and Kiernan's 22
Yeah.
when they were
Okay.
dating.
So
That's
double,
not-
more than double.
Yeah, it's not the same.
Anyways, I will say this though, and I do believe in this point. Not everyone is the same age that's the same age. I'm sure when people met Taylor at 22, she had already toured the world 6 times. She had already been a professional for this. She's already owned 6 houses. She's already, she is not a 22-year-old in a lot of ways. In the same way, when I met Ashley had already had a bigger life than I had.
Right.
She had started this incredible fucking brand, The Row, already. So I do think that has to be in the equation a little bit. Well, like Mae Whitman. Mae Whitman has been on a set since she was 5 years old. When I met her and she was 22 playing 15, she seemed 38. Like
Right.
anyone will tell you that was around her. Like her references are all from the same era that mine would have been.
Yeah.
So I just don't think they're all the same. Everyone
It's not. There's more nuance. It's not just like this is the cutoff or it's this amount and then it's bad. It's not you, but you have to look at each individual situation. And you should listen to Dear John, because that's her song about John Mayer.
Oh,
It's just an interesting, it just seems like it was an interesting relationship.
her and John Mayer.
Yeah.
Okay.
Bad. It was a bad relationship.
Okay.
You should read the lyrics.
I know
out loud for the
it's also
podcast.
such a good song. It's such a good song. She's such a good lyricist. I can't believe it.
Well, there's a line.
Poet. She's an American poet.
Dear John, don't you think I was too young to be messed with?
Yeah. The girl in the dress cried the whole way home. Yep. She wrote that. That was Speak Now. So she was young when she even
2010
wrote
it
it.
was released. So
Yeah.
13 years ago she released it.
Yeah, she was. It's also interesting now because her evolution. This is truly one of the reasons I do love her so much. I've always liked her songs a ton, but me liking her a lot is more new, and it's because of her evolution. You see a kid in these younger songs and like angst and anger and
Jealousy.
yeah, I'm sure jealousy.
I don't know. I'm not allowed to use any pejoratives.
Well, no, you are, but you don't know the songs.
Well, when I hear like I don't look like those girls and I'm not a cheerleader and I'm not the early
For
ones, those
sure.
sound like those sound like
Oh, they are.
Yeah.
Well, she started out. That's also why she's an interesting kind of character because she started out as that person. Like I'm like you. We're
Yes.
we're
the
not the
monsters.
cheerleader.
We're what's her name's Lady
Lady
Gaga's.
Yeah, like literally her lyric of she wears short skirts, I wear t-shirts, or whatever. She's on the bleachers.
Yeah.
And that's who she was early. And then she became
The cheerleader.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so it's
Every one of her
strange-
boyfriends is the quarterback from the football team.
Right. So it's a strange, I'm sure for her, identity shift that she's had to, I'm sure, like struggle with taking on of, oh no, I'm not that person anymore.
Yeah.
Probably hard when you've like built this foundation on I'm on the outside.
Uh-huh.
Which I guess is a lot of famous people's situation.
It's
Many.
100%.
Yeah.
It's just weird. Yeah, it's seen as endearing in this situation, and it's seen as predatorial and when it's a male. That's what I'm kind of
Well, no,
out.
we've been on the ride with her this whole time. Since she was 15 years old.
But like, I get it. Yeah, she was never the cheerleader, and now she is. And yes, she's dating all the jocks. Why wouldn't she? That's the dream we're all instilled with. Like, she's doing everything you would expect. I have zero judgment of her. I totally understand her.
Yeah.
I think it's weird that if a guy does it, he's a predator. If she does it, it's endearing.
But who's a predator? John Mayer?
A lot of people. Yeah, I think if a male does that in public right now, they're in trouble. Our boy that we had on from fucking Succession, he's getting blasted because he fucks a lot of people. I mean, truly, that's like, he can't go fuck a bunch of people.
It wasn't. It was on like Dumois, go find Nicholas. It wasn't he's getting blasted. It was like, but he's a fuck boy, but not in a bad way. It was like, he hangs out at this bar, so go there if you want to hang out with him. I mean, Lizzie's like, she even used to go there.
You think right now in our current culture, a guy can fuck a ton of women and be out loud about it and not be looked at poorly? That I just want to know if we have a completely different view of what's happening in our current society.
No, I think if you are being disrespectful to women, if you're just like having sex, hey, leave, and then the next day you have sex with another person, hey, leave, and you're having, yes, I do think that is looked down upon now, and it wasn't always.
No.
Yeah.
People are like, if you want to fuck. Now it's a moral issue. Promiscuity is now a moral issue, which I find to be curious.
If both people want to just fuck for the night and never talk again.
Abundantly clear. I like that Taylor does what she's doing. All I'm saying is I don't know why we're saying that other people can't fuck it. Like, I don't understand the movement
but
of no one should fuck.
But she's in relationships.
Yeah, so that's what she wants to do. She wants to date the popular guy for a spell. That's how she's getting her validation.
Yeah.
So I'm not judging how she gets her validation. Someone else is getting validation just by having sex.
But her validation isn't at the cost of a person. I'm just going to have sex with you and not talk to you ever again.
I would argue Jake Gyllenhaal probably feels differently. I think he's probably feels like he's
paid
an enormous price for being in a relationship with her. And I would imagine John Mayer feels like he paid an enormous price for being in a relationship. So
I think there's real for being in relationships.
Well, no, hold on though. You just said, what about if the girl wanted a relationship and the guy just wanted to have sex? Is he a pig? She pays a price for that. I'm saying these guys that have been with her have definitely paid a big price. So does that make her behavior amoral? I don't think so.
Relationships are different than you. I mean, you have to believe that, right? That
I don't think that being in a relationship is more moral than just having casual sex. I don't think morality's in the mix.
Well, I think it is amoral to use someone for sex.
What if both people are using each other
then
for
that's
sex?
not using someone. That's two people consenting to a situation.
Yeah.
But if you're using someone for sex and you know it's just for sex and you don't care to ever talk to that person again and they do, and you know that there's a high chance that they do, yeah, I think that's a bad idea.
You think it's amoral for someone to only want sex from somebody else?
And have sex with someone who wants more.
If you lied, anyone who lied and said, I want to date you, if we have sex, I want to date you, pig, liar, deceptive, bad. Mm-hmm. We meet at a bar, we don't know each other, we fuck that night, you wanted to fuck. I don't see the morality issue there. Now, the next day, someone wakes up and they, either boy or girl, decide they want to be in a relationship. It doesn't work out. I don't know what your expectations were. You didn't go on a bunch of dates. You met at a bar and fucked.
Yeah.
So I don't like calling that amoral. I disagree with. It feels very puritanical or...
No. If you are on a date with someone and you recognize, oh, this person like really is into me and likes me and clearly wants to date me, and I don't. I'm not interested in this person at all.
Right.
But I do want to fuck.
Yeah.
You might need to think about that for a second before you go through with it, because that person wants a lot and you know you don't.
Oh, great. So I take this as exactly as you're saying it. So one person wants one thing, another person wants the other thing.
Yeah, and you know
they both wanted something.
But you know one person isn't going to get what they want. They're not going to get the relationship. You already know that. You don't want to be in a relationship.
But what if the person's saying, I don't want to be in a relationship? And then the person who wanted to be in a relationship with them fucks them. Then is that amoral? If the person was honest, like, oh, I'm not looking for a relationship.
I mean, I guess if you're straight up, look, I'm not interested. I am interested in
and him rolling around and having some fun
having
tonight.
fun tonight. But that's really all I'm interested in. And I'm just being straightforward. And they say, yeah, that's fine. Great. Everyone is on the same page.
Okay, great.
It's when you know, and this is where fame gets into play here, right? And that's just a reality of being a famous person. If you're a hot anyone and you're on a date with someone and you can kind of tell, anyone can tell anytime you're on a date with someone.
Do you think this at all like takes all responsibility away from everybody? If your true intention is to like date and marry this person, isn't that on you to any degree?
Wait, say it again.
Like your position is like, if a girl's like wants to be with a guy and the guy only wants to have sex, and then they have sex that first night and then he doesn't call her, he's a jerk. Where's her responsibility? Like, is she responsible at all?
For what?
For what happened?
Which is what? That she liked
that
a
she had
person.
expectations that were unrealistic.
But why is it unrealistic to like a person you're on a date with? That's just
to assume you'll be in a relationship with somebody, I think is a crazy expectation.
Not to assume a relationship, to assume there's something mutual happening. If a guy is just trying to fuck, that is a different set of goals than let's have sex and like see what our chemistry is, and maybe there's nothing, but I like you enough to do this. Is a much different thing than like I just want to fuck a body tonight, and it does, and I don't actually care. Who it is.
Right.
Because if the other person cares, that's shitty.
Yeah, just to me, it makes the other party have zero responsibility, which is like because the intentions were nice, they're absolved of any responsibility in the whole situation. Like, and that to me is selling people really short and kind of takes away people's autonomy. It's kind of like the conversation I wandered into on Synced. It was about Taylor, of course, dating Jake Gyllenhaal and that he was too old. But if she pursues him or she wants to be with an older guy, you're on the outside going, no, she can't. What? You're taking away her autonomy.
No one's saying no.
Well, to paint her as a victim means that she wasn't autonomous in making the decision.
No, people can be victims in a situation that they have entered into. There can be carnage in a relationship, in any sort of interaction that people have. If someone's doing someone can be doing something bad, and that happens in marriages all the time. People have entered that. It doesn't mean just because you've entered a marriage that people can be horrible to one another or take advantage of each other or whatever.
I'm just saying, if a 25-year-old gal pursues a 35-year-old man and then they break up, I don't think the 25-year-old can then say, you're a predator and you were picking on my...
That. She did not say he was a predator. She did not say Jake Gyllenhaal.
Right, but when
predator.
I walked into the conversation, it was about how gross it was in the video, the age difference.
Yes, this is coming up on Synced in a couple weeks. Someone wrote in because she's in a relationship with a much older person with a kid. And so it reminded me that I had just watched this All Too Well music video, and I've never considered the age piece in the Jake Gyllenhaal Taylor Swift relationship. Like I never really thought that much about that. But then when I saw it visualized, it did look like, oh God, she does look like a kid. And it just was jarring to see. I'm not saying he took advantage of her. They were in a relationship for a while. I don't think he took advantage of her. But I do think there was probably a little bit of a power dynamic in there. Maybe not. I don't know. I wasn't in it. But that relationship had a major effect on her is all we can sort of know. But not that they shouldn't have had sex. She wanted to. No one's saying that's a problem. It's just also, Swifties are like, that person hurt her. And that's life.
I guess if I had a son and he fell in love with some older star, female, I would say to my son, you need to have appropriate expectations. This person doesn't go long with anybody. Like, you can't imagine you're going to be the crazy exception to the rule that has been established by this person.
That's not fair if the person is telling you every day, I love you so much, you're my world, No. You have to leave that at the door if you're entering any relationship. You can't, with one leg in.
I'm sorry, you meet someone that's been divorced 6 times and you're going to get married. I think you're being absolutely naive if you don't think divorce is at least highly likely.
But then,
I mean, we're just pretending that the people don't have patterns at that point.
well, I guess, but also that's a little bit of a
Detour?
divorce thing. A lot of people date a lot of people until they find the person they're going to marry, and then they're done. Like you, and like Kristen, and like everyone.
But that wasn't me, actually. I had a 5-year relationship, a 9-year relationship, and then now this one.
Well, you dated a lot of people in between. You've had
I had
many
sex
relationships
with other people.
You were in a relationship with Kate. You were in a relationship with Ashley. You were and then you've had sex also. But you've had smaller. You're that other girl. I forget her name.
If you met me at 32, you would have known I was in a relationship for 9 years. So what you would know me was like, this person is like, they're into long relationships. That would be the right assumption about me at that point.
Sure.
Now, if you'd met me at 32 and I'd never dated anyone longer than 3 months, you would absolutely be naive and just willingly not acknowledging reality to think, oh, this person's built for long-term relationship.
But that's painting with such a broad brush. Like if people look at my story, then they'll be like, well, she's never dated anyone seriously, so I can't date her because she's never dated anyone seriously.
That's way different.
But it's not. It's looking at my history and my patterns. But
you don't have a history of having a new boyfriend every 2 months.
Yeah, but I have my own history, and I'm
But
saying...
your own history isn't the least bit problematic for committing to a relationship.
Well,
I don't
for
see.
a lot of people, it might be. It might be like she has no experience. She has no...
I got to be really clear. There's nothing wrong with dating someone every 3 months or not having dated anyone for a year. I'm not saying that at all. I'm talking about personal responsibility, being realistic.
I understand. Also, on the personal responsibility end, if you're love bombing a person, you have to understand that has an effect. If he every day is saying, you're my person... Mm-hmm. I've never been more in love with anyone than I have been with you, or all these things. Of course, she's going to believe it. And by the way, that is where age starts to come into play. When you're younger, you are more likely to not take that with a grain of salt and to just be like, yes.
Let's just say I have 2 daughters. My advice isn't going to be to them. If you meet a 38-year-old guy when you're 22 and he's saying he's never met anyone like you, that's crazy. I mean, that's the advice I'm going to give to my daughters because I love them and want to protect them.
I mean, yeah, it's complicated.
Ooh.
Okay, so...
We did a good job. Congratulations.
We did, but now we have to get into something.
Okay.
Okay, the city in Pittsburgh that I say Carnegie.
Carnegie.
I know you say it.
Everyone should say Carnegie. That's what everyone says.
I know. It's like...
Neanderthal.
Yeah.
An orangutan.
Yeah. It is Point Breeze. It's called
I got lost when we went on our detour.
Oh, it's the area in Pittsburgh where he lived and other rich people lived.
What was it called?
Point Breeze, yes. Attracted Pittsburgh's wealthiest citizens who built large homes and mansions along Penn Avenue. Carnegie moved here in 1862. Okay. I was going to play Allentown by Billy Joel. Actually, I will.
Yeah, you will. It's got that whistle at the beginning. We love the whistle. You recognize it?
I don't.
It's on his greatest hits.
I don't have that album. Oh, should I keep going?
No, still nothing on the chorus?
No.
Oh, okay.
I don't know it.
Oh, wow. You didn't go that deep on the Billy Joel greatest hits?
I didn't.
Double CD
I don't
set?
have that vinyl or CD or tape.
It's pound for pound one of the greatest hits.
You love it. Oh, wow. Okay. Another entire, we could have a hour-long conversation on.
Okay.
So we're not gonna,
Okay.
but maybe next time.
Okay.
But I will say the analysis that is cited on the dating app percentages,
The Galloway, yeah.
yeah, Scott's main thing, is from a Hinge engineer that's since been taken down and removed.
The article?
Yeah.
Okay.
So that finding is now considered,
It's disputed.
yeah. And then there's a lot on it. So feel free to do deep dives, people, on this, because it is interesting and there's lots on it. But that particular, this amount of percentage goes to this amount of people.
It's also cited in a book I read.
Oh, you'll have to let me know.
Yeah.
I'm curious.
You probably don't think it's 96 getting 4%, blah, blah, blah. But do you think it's pretty skewed or no? Do you think a
Yeah.
small percentage of the men are getting access to the vast majority of women?
I think smaller percentage, but there are also more men on the apps. That's on here
Okay.
as well. Okay, according to Stanford, this was in 2017, 39% of heterosexual couples reported meeting their partner online. So that's sort of substantial.
Yeah.
I wanted to find if Indian Americans had a higher percentage of suicide.
Were you able to find that?
Not really. It's all like broken down into non-Hispanic you know how it's like,
It's either white, Hispanic, non-Hispanic,
Yeah.
white, black.
yeah, it's all broken down in Asian. Yeah, but I wanted specifically.
Subcontinent.
I did. I couldn't find it. There was stats in India, of course, but I wanted to know Indian Americans, and I couldn't find it. But I wondered about it based on her book and all
What's
of
your
this stuff.
What's your gut guess?
My gut is it's high.
Interesting.
Yeah.
My gut is it's not high, and I wonder if that's part of the model minority myth have been presented.
Right. I think it might be high because of it, sort of in keeping with what she said and like just what I know personally.
Right. Well, this is way too anecdotal, but seems really high in the rich kid population. I'll say that, like inordinately high.
Yeah.
You read this thing Erica's been saying, like 3 kids, I think, at whatever the fanciest one is. They had like 3 suicides this year. And I don't think that's happening at the lower class schools.
Yeah. We've had all these people on basically saying a lot of it is these pressures. And often that does show up in schools like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
They have to be perfect and they have to have straight A's and get a perfect
And their
essay.
parents, they have a lot of free time. So they're micromanaging. Like the best part about my mom being,
busy.
yeah, she could only know so much.
Yeah,
There wasn't
totally.
enough time in the day
Yeah.
for her to micromanage my scholastics.
Yeah. Pressure from all angles.
Yeah, but if you have a parent, if you got like a dedicated at-home parent and that all that parent does is worry about whether you're getting into college or not, it's got to be insufferable.
Yeah. And you've grown up in this private school system that tells you from day one, your parents have put in a ton of money and effort to get you to the
The
highest
point
level.
of this place is to get you to Harvard
Yeah.
or Stanford.
Yeah.
So
And
if you don't get, if you end up going to U of M,
you're a failure.
you're a piece of shit.
Yeah, I know.
A school I would have cut off a finger to get
Exactly.
into.
Yeah. Oh, that reminds me, one of my old professors reached out.
Oh, really?
So this was a PR teacher.
Okay.
And she now works in San Diego, but she said one of her students said, "Oh, you should listen to this podcast." And she said, "I knew I recognized the name, but I couldn't really remember why." And then I realized that it was you.
Oh, wonderful.
And
you should have lunch with her.
Yeah, I guess I'd have to go to San Diego.
Because I've had several meals with Mr. Wood, my 5th grade teacher who turned my life around. Because I talked about him so much publicly that we reconnected.
Well, I'd like to have lunch with my 8th grade teacher, Mr. Tornese. I loved him so much.
That's doable, I feel like.
It might be.
Is he still in Duluth?
Yeah, and my friend Kirsten, who now works as an assistant principal in that school system, she's had lunch with him.
Okay, she could connect you
She
with
could
everybody.
do a connection. But
What about the hot?
doctor, he wasn't a doctor.
You've made him a doctor.
Yeah.
Right.
Covington.
Oh.
Yeah, he's gone. I mean,
off the grid.
I don't know where he is.
You'd love dinner with him, though.
I'd love to have lunch.
And breakfast.
And breakfast at Cheryl's. We can meet at Cheryl's. No, but this teacher, Dr. Sweetser, shout out. It was 16 years ago. She says it in the email, and that freaked me
you
out.
out,
Yeah.
yeah.
And she reminded me that I am a scholarly co-author.
What does that mean?
I have a published piece of work
Oh, wow.
in Public Relations Review.
Kind of like my story about the bus.
What story about the bus?
The yellow limo that was published in the 8th grade.
Oh,
the creative writing
Okay.
magazine that went out.
Yeah, but this is a peer-reviewed journal
Oh, from college.
from college.
Oh, what's the
Oh
topic?
my God! Wow.
What?
I just barely. I don't really remember it, but it was PR practitioners' use of social media tools and communication technology. That is pretty early for me to have.
You were groundbreaking.
Oh my God!
You've forgotten everything you've known because you're just now learning social media.
I know. I have. Wow. All right. Well, look into Public Relations Review and you can find my scholarly work.
Scholarly work.
Yeah. Wow. I think, though I'm not 100%, so I feel bad doing this, but I'm gonna. I think Dr. Sweetser is responsible for the only B I had in college.
Whoa. And now she's reaching out to you.
Yeah.
Oh, my God. She's like my manager at
CPK.
Maybe she's like, hey, been thinking, I'm willing to go B+.
No, it was, remember? Or maybe you don't. Of course you don't remember. Why would you remember this? Although I do think I've talked about it a lot. It was an 89.5, I think. And I went in and met and asked if she could please round it up.
Yeah.
And she wouldn't.
Yeah, she has.
And I don't remember 100% if it was her. So, but it was a PR teacher of mine, and I think it was her because she was tough. She's a tough cookie. She's in the military.
Okay.
Yeah.
Tough cookie.
But anyway, I'm grateful for it because I need the story.
Yes, right. You needed some adversity.
I did.
A, B. I don't know how you got through it.
It was really. Can imagine.
I failed classes in high school.
Well, it's one thing if you're failing and you're getting C's, but if you have a perfect record and then you have it's like it's getting silver.
It's like blowing a turn on the track. 13-turn track, you did 12 perfect. You blow that third.
Yeah, and then it ruins your
Your
entire
whole lap
straight.
time.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's really bad.
You're not a hero.
No, but I am a scholarly author.
You are. I'm going to start calling you Dr. Badman.
Oh my God. I will take it. All right. Well, I think that's all for Prachi.
You know when they introduce people and they say Mr. and Mrs. So-and-so? What if they're both doctors? They say Dr. and Dr. Padman?
Doctor and maybe.
Because they probably wouldn't say Mrs. and Mr. if she was a doctor.
Well, what if only one is a doctor?
Doctor
You'd say Mr. and Doctor.
And Dr. Cheryl.
Oh.
Edith Cheryl's. She's a doctor in damn good food, doctorate degree. Master in hash. Corned beef, that is.
You should learn how to make it.
I should. I really should. I'm going to do that right now.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, bye.
Love you.